All right, it's 6:15. Let's begin. I'll call the Brattleboro Selectboard meeting of Tuesday, June 3rd, 2025 to order. John, has this meeting been properly warned?
Yes, Liz, it was.
Great. Are there any adjustments to the agenda?
No.
Great. All right. Let's approve the minutes from April 7th and May 1st. Do I have a motion? Isaac has a motion.
Yes, I move that we approve the minutes of the April
17th and May 1st.
And May 1st meetings.
Great. Isaac has made a motion to approve the minutes from April 17th and May 1st, 2025. All select board members in favor of that motion, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Very good. That's 5-0. Thank you. Now, Chair's remarks. I just wanted to inform the public that I did, in fact, write to the governor regarding the bill known as H91, and I do not believe that our legislators will hold us in a bad view for doing so. I talked to my legislator today, and he was supportive of wants to be the legislator who is aware of municipal concerns. And so I believe that we can continue to build a relationship with our select board, with our legislators that is helpful to the town as a whole. And I told the governor what I thought of H91. So the other thing that I would like to mention is that our own Pete Lynch, who is here this evening, has been awarded the recipient of the 2025 Vermont Tree Steward Award. And the award is sponsored by the Vermont Urban and Community Forestry Program. And Pete is our unsung hero, which recognizes his consistent behind-the-scenes effort. As a matter of fact, he's so behind the scenes, he's in the back. But we thank him nonetheless. John, do you have remarks?
Well, I'll just continue on the Pete Lynch kudos, and he's been stepping in and covering a lot of the special town-wide projects that Patrick Moreland used to do, and he's been doing an excellent job at that. And really, everyone that he interacts with gives me feedback that Pete Lynch is a star. So keep it up, Pete. Really appreciate it. I wanted to let the board know that the Hinsdale Select Board has a draft joint letter from the two select boards that could be sent to New Hampshire DOT on the Bridges project. We expect to hear back from them whether they want to sign on to your letter or whether they have any revisions to suggest by June 17th. So we can look to talk about that at your first meeting in July, perhaps. The Finance Department has announced that it is now able to take credit card payments at the counter downstairs in Suite 111. People can purchase recycling bins, pay-as-you-throw bags, compost bins, and they can pay their water and sewer bills now with a credit card. The fee for that is 2.7% plus 5 cents per transaction for those items, and that is done through OpenGov. Also, property tax payments may also be made at the counter or at the public kiosk in the hall. Again, those can be done with a credit card now, and the fee for service for online processing for those is 3.7%, and that service is through NIMRIC and ACI. Water and sewer bills will be mailed out July 15th. Payment is due on or before August 15th to avoid late charges of 1% interest and 8% penalty. Tax bills will be mailed out by July 15th, with payments due each quarter, August 15th, November 17th, February 17th, 2026, and May 15th, 2026. Interest of 1% is added each quarter after the due dates, with an additional 8% penalty after the May 15th due date if unpaid. The Vermont Emergency Management Project Review Committee has identified the Detman Bridge Replacement Project at Tri-Park for funding through the 2023 Flooding Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. This is a fantastic success from our team in planning and DPW that they got this grant, that our application was identified. That will undergo further development, and if this is approved and FEMA awards this grant to the town, it will cover the entire $1.7 million cost of that bridge that the select board agreed to take on to connect Tri-Park up with the rest of the town. So that is great news if that moves forward. There will be a public meeting on Tuesday, June 10th, about the Western Avenue intersection study. The consultant will be sharing the data that they collected last fall, and the public will have the opportunity to express preferences about the use of the public right-of-way. The meeting is from 6 to 7:30 here in the Select Board meeting room at 230 Main Street. In-person attendance is encouraged, but a Zoom link is also available and can be found on the calendar on the town website. And then finally, I just wanted to announce that the town will be hosting its annual Juneteenth art show here at the Municipal Center, downstairs on the first floor. That will be held weekdays starting June 16th through the end of the month from 9 to 4:30 p.m. This show makes space available here at the Municipal Center to local black artists and features Mwanga William and Candace Taylor Diallo this year. So look for that. That's all I have.
Can I just ask you a question
Sure.
about the bins, paying for the recycling at the town offices? How soon will new equipment be? I mean, how long will these items be utilized?
You mean when will we transition to the new system?
Mm-hmm.
That is not expected to happen until next spring, late winter, spring. So
Okay.
It's business as it has been, business as usual from now until, say, April of next year.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do select board members have comments or committee reports? Oscar?
Thank you. Just a brief comment to address, there's been a little reporting / info floating around that relies on the idea that Brattleboro, regarding the bridge project, would like to take the bridges down. This has been, I've gotten a couple questions about it. So I just wanted to briefly and hopefully non-controversially say that the Brattleboro Selectboard hasn't taken any action on that. We haven't made any decision as a board on what we think should happen with the bridges. And I think that info out there is just based on some earlier misunderstanding. So I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Anyone else?
And with that, I also want to thank John Potter for submitting the letter to his dad. Great. That's the first step.
Thank you, Amanda. Isaac?
Sure. On that note, just wanted to request a copy of the letter and wondering when we might be able to get to see that.
So my plan was to bring that back July 3rd with any changes that Hinsdale suggests, and that will be in your packet and available to everyone to see at that point.
Great. And at that point, we would review it to approve to sign it, or how would that?
However you
Okay.
you want to do it.
Okay. Great. And I just would like to wish members of the LGBT community a happy Pride Month.
I was told today that was celebrated with cheesecake. Is that correct?
Are you offering?
No, but one was delivered to my house today.
Oh, great.
For Pride Month?
Oh, for Pride Month. No, I didn't hear you correctly, but there is a Jewish holiday about the Torah that's celebrated with cheesecake, I was told today.
Right.
She's clearly drunk with cheesecake.
Well, if there's cheesecake during the break, I would be glad to sample it.
Well, no, it also happens to be my husband's birthday, so the cheesecake is at home with him.
Oh, okay.
It's just teasing.
All right. So, managers' comments, select board comments, public participation. Do people have comments that are not associated with any agenda item? Susan, please raise your hand.
Susan Belleville, Brattleboro. I have two things to comment about. One is back on March 20th, the board endorsed a draft vision for the Canal Street, Safe Street, Stormwater Corridor Plan. I was of the impression that there would be no movement on that plan at that time or in the near future, but I'm seeing signs that there are some pieces of that plan being implemented, such as lane changes, traffic pattern changes, particularly at Canal Street and Birge Street. They seem to have taken out the left-hand turn from Canal onto Birge Street. That is gone. They've made it a single lane for the northbound traffic at that intersection. A lot of people are very confused because they don't know that there's a lane change. I'm not a fan of that lane change because it's important, particularly at peak times during the day of travel, that people be able to undo the congestion coming off the hill heading north on Route 5 to be able to turn left and not impede traffic that wants to continue on down to Main Street. I know it is a problem for pedestrians at that particular intersection, but for traffic it is really difficult. I'm just putting that out there that it appears to be a change. The other thing I want to talk about is a break-in that occurred at a local business on Saturday morning, where the business was damaged and inventory was taken from that business in excess of several thousands of dollars. This is a small business that could not afford that kind of loss. They're still suffering. They have no way to replace their inventory that was taken. I applaud the Brattleboro Police Department for taking quick action and taking a lot of details and spending time at the business to collect evidence. But this is, stuff is still ongoing, and it's important that people understand we can't let our guard down because things like this are still happening. And I'm very sad for this business owner. It wasn't just him either. There was another individual who was also victimized during that same time period. His car was broken into. It was vandalized for no good reason. Gasoline was poured all over the interior. And it was just needless vandalism, as well as the crime of stealing property. Neither one of these people could afford that kind of loss. And I want to keep the community aware that this stuff is still ongoing. And I want to thank the Bratt Police Department for everything they've done.
Thank you. John, do you want to talk about that lane change?
I wasn't aware of any lane change, but perhaps Dan has more information.
That's the thing. It never makes the press anymore. They don't do any press releases around things like this.
So the paving
Dan, just
project-
identify yourself, please.
Hi, sorry. Dan Tyler, Director of Public Works. The paving project that V-Trans is going to perform this summer, they would typically, we paint the white lines, the edge lines, the symbols and everything. They paint the center line. That's going to get paved here shortly. They're planning on starting in July, and that's going to be one of the first areas they do. So we had started to paint, thinking they were going elsewhere, and they're not going to paint the center line because it's all going to get ripped up here in another month. So none of the changes from the Canal Street plan are implemented at this point, or will be implemented at this point. It's just a straight-up paving project.
So what Susan has seen is some sort of interim.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, very good. Oscar?
And just to clarify, there is no current plan there's no current intention in the near future to remove that left turn lane?
No.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Jane Wheeler. I live in District 8 in Brattleboro, and I just wanted to remind the folks that are here that on June 7th at the library, the legislators give an update on things that are happening at the state level. That's from 10:30 to noon. And I felt that important to bring up because I did watch couldn't be here on May 30th, but I did watch it. Then there was a couple of arguments that people used that actually left me a little uncomfortable. And so the first one was about just because I voted, basically it's because if you vote, the argument was if you voted for the legislators, you should just let them do their job and, sort of put all your trust in them. And I think that's a dangerous attitude. Just because I voted for certain legislators, it doesn't mean I can't give them my thoughts and to push back when I disagree with them. Maybe I have to accept the outcome, but I still have a right to do that. And the other argument was about sending the letter. Somehow Brattleboro would be perceived as bad or naughty. I don't think that's a very good reason. I was kind of surprised at the concerns of some of the board members when they expressed that maybe we would be viewed in a bad light towards continuing to advocate for increased municipal support and consideration in the role Brattleboro plays in the sheltering for statewide unhoused, because it might make us look bad. Again, we have the right and the duty to speak up. And I want to thank Liz for sending that letter, and I know she's been an advocate as well as maybe some others, but I know Liz has been an advocate for that. And I think it's important to know that that's the democratic process. We have the right to disagree.
Thank you, Jean. Yes, sir, in the green.
Hello, Alexander Belagor Guilford. I wanted to thank the Select Board for clearing up confusion on the bridges, and I'm here on behalf of the new owners of the Whetstone, right by the Anna Hunt Marsh Bridge. And we are currently in communication with the Hinsdale Select Board and the New Hampshire Department of Transportation. And we wanted to tell you guys that what they're planning to do with the two bridges is they have already bought 2 fences, and they want to have a bridge on their side on the east, and they want to have a bridge on the west to kind of slow traffic and slow any mishandlings of people on the bridges and to sort of mitigate problems there. It's for their own interest. What we're trying to do, and we see it as beneficial for not only the town, but also for the Whetstone, the future rail and river, which we're trying to establish there, continuing the Whetstone's legacy, is we're trying to convince New Hampshire to move that bridge on the Anna Hunt Marsh side to the island. They want to have the fence be right up against the bridge, so right where the road ends, right where the bridge starts. They want to put a giant, ugly chain link fence there. And sort of that's to the detriment of the Brattleboro locals and to people who enjoy, now that traffic's gone, now that things have slowed down in that area, people who enjoy the bridge and people who get off the train. There's going to be a big Amtrak station there that's new. We're going to have lots more tourists, hopefully. We don't want to see people be disenfranchised, be disappointed with getting off the train and seeing that big ugly fence there. So we're trying to have the fence be pushed back. And we want to sort of bring dialogue for the new bridges, or for the old bridges, and having sort of dialogue be opened up to the public. And we want the public to sort of be able to voice their concerns with the Select Board and clear confusion in the air with the two bridges and their fate. Because right now there's kind of a void in media and in dialogue when it comes to discussion with the bridges. The town of Hinsdale, based on these speculative rumors, the emails that have been going around, they think that the town of Brattleboro and the Select Board unanimously wants both of the bridges to be, kaput, gone. When I think this is very clearly not the case. They're working on the bridges. We see people there every day. People get off the train station, they go onto the bridges, and they're enjoying, the tranquility that's there now that the cars are gone and the traffic's gone. Also, what we're trying to do with the town of Hinsdale and with the New Hampshire government is we're trying to lease the Anna Hunt Marsh Bridge to sort of open it up further to members of the community and tourists. And we're trying to have space there for dining and for more active community participation when it comes to, the scenic nature on the bridge and to sort of future possibilities with the influx of tourists in that area. So basically what I'm trying to inquire the select board to do is maybe have a public forum where members of the town can come together and express their concerns of the closure of the bridges. But yeah.
Alexander, let me just clarify something with you. There needs to be a distinction between your advocacy for the bridges and what you plan to do versus your bidding on a lease. And when you're bidding on a lease, there's a legal process around public bidding that you'll need to adhere to, and I'm assuming that you'll be competing with other bridges, other bidders, so that your advocacy for the bridge is on one hand and your potential bidding is something else. And we're not there yet, but when the time comes for you to be a bidder, there's rules for that, and I'm sure you'll abide by them.
Yes. It's for the interest of the town. It's for the interest of everybody in Brattleboro.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes.
Brett Morrison, and I just wanted to have an opportunity to express to the board that there is a fair number of people that have taken initiative. I'm one of a small group, including Jason Cooper, who I know you all know well, Betsy Hall here, and Lissa Weinman, among others. We have around 60 signed up members. I think everyone is aware there was a tremendous showing by the two Rotaries and food co-op volunteers on April 27th, removing a ton of trash from the island. Now that sounds horrible, but that's also a year's worth of accumulation since the last time there was a cleanup. We have a cleanup scheduled every month through October. We have received gifts for the future, for the costs of cleanup and maintenance. And I guess I'm going to add to Xander's suggestion that the fences should be pushed all the way off. The idea that putting them on the far side of the bridge is satisfactory. No one on the Friends of Island Park agrees with, and the popular sentiment, I would say in town, from 5 years of bouncing around, mostly is really enthusiastic for what you have down there. It's bird song. Right now it's just fragrant with blossom smells. It's not a dystopian, I'm not arguing the North Bridges, but it's a really special place right now, and it has a really tremendous upside. So I guess in light of the work that the Friends of Island Park is able to offer, including help with public fundraising and the grunt work of keeping it clean in the near term, I just would encourage you to take the time to identify the problems which have been often referenced but poorly defined. And please take the time to really clarify what our town's concerns are, what Hinsdale's are, and let's chart a path where the island is a resource for everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Kate O'Connor.
Hi, everybody. Kate O'Connor, Brattleboro. I just want to say something that, because time did not permit me to say it at the special town meeting, I'd like to say it now, that I hope that you folks will sort of make good on the conversation you had about looking at the FY27 budget sooner rather than later. For me, I voted for the FY26 budget, even though I did not think it was good. And I voted against the amendment to cut it, even though I think it should have been cut. And I voted the way I did because I knew if it came back to you, you'd be handed a list of 100 things, and you said, pick from this 100 things. I truly believe we are still in a financial crisis. I think the anything you do further on the whatever budget, and the FY27 is the one, has to be thoughtful and strategic. It has to be a town-wide solution. We have some really smart department heads. We have some really great memos in tonight's packet that prove that. And I think it's really, really important. You have to start now so you can stop the ship from going into the iceberg. I also hope, and I'm not really clear if you're going to still see monthly financial reports, but I hope you are. We learned that we already know we deficit spent in FY24. We know we're deficit spending in FY25, and we know that the FY26 budget is based on hope and aspirations. So to me, just because we have a budget now does not mean we're okay. In fact, I still lose sleep over it at night. Our taxpayers can't afford the taxes that we're making them pay. Our budget is unsustainable, and our fiscal situation is unsustainable. So I really hope that you keep it on the front burner. It should be the number one priority of what you folks do. I can't think of anything more important than making sure we have a sustainable community that can continue, and we have some really smart people that can help. So thank you.
Thank you.
You want to comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm my understanding. John, we're going to get monthly financial reports, but quarterly presentations. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Anyone else? Is there anyone online, Seth? All right, let's begin with the consent agenda. John, do you want to present the consent agenda?
Sure. We have 5 items on the consent agenda for you tonight. If you approve this agenda, you'll be approving a tobacco license and tobacco substitute endorsement permit for Sam's Glass World, which is located at 1020 Western Ave. You'll be approving the annual dog warrant to enforce the requirement that all dogs in the town of Brattleboro be vaccinated and licensed. And you'll be approving 2 parade permits, one for Out in the Opens March to be held on June 15th, and one for Red Clover Rovers Fun Race to be held on July 4th. And you'll be approving a grant amendment from the Department of Public Safety in the amount of $34,452.21 for the 250 Birge Street Floodplain Restoration Project.
Great. Thank you, John.
Yep.
So that's the consent agenda. Does anyone on the select board want to pull an item from the consent agenda? Great. Shall we have a motion about the consent agenda?
I'll motion.
Great.
I motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Great. Peter has moved to accept the consent agenda as presented. All select board members in favor of approving the consent agenda, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
And that passed 5-0. Great. Regular business. We have a parade permit request from Indivisible Brattleboro. And there are people here to speak to that?
Yes, I believe so. This was a request to hold a rally and a march in Brattleboro on June 14th. The application is in your packet, and it's expecting up to 1,000 people. There will be sound amplified music and food trucks, and we have some representatives from Indivisible Brattleboro here with us tonight to answer any questions that the board may have. The town staff are recommending approval of this permit, but we did want to let the select board know that these larger events are costing us significantly in overtime and staff time, and we think in the neighborhood of $900 an hour. So if these are 2-3 hour events, they start to add up, and that's why you're seeing some of the pressure on our budget that you've experienced recently. So we just wanted to make you aware of that, but are recommending that you approve this permit.
Great. So are there people here from Indivisible Brattleboro? Would you like to come sit at our table? Great. So please introduce yourself.
My name is Christine Sapinski, and I'm with Indivisible Brattleboro.
Great. Thank you.
And I'm Jill Green, also with Indivisible Brattleboro.
Great.
I'm Mark Baxter, a friend of Indivisible.
Great, thank you. And so this march is intending to start at the Congregational Church, is that it?
Correct.
And march to the Commons?
Yes. The route that we just discussed with your staff is to march up on the west side. What's the west side? East side.
East side.
The east
sidewalks.
side
East side.
sidewalk up to the Commons and
Great.
cross at Putney.
And so the speeches and whatnot will be at the Commons and
They
not
will.
at the church?
They will. We'll have music, speeches.
Great.
Right at the Commons.
Great. And so really the question is whether Indivisible would like to voluntarily contribute to the town to offset the costs of the police and first responders who will be present at the rally.
I can't answer that. I don't know what funding we have available, but we can certainly make a contribution. We're going to ask for donations.
Great.
But I can't tell you
Great.
how much.
Great.
Yeah.
And I think, the town manager and the police department can tell you what those charges would be, so you'll have an idea of what to ask your people for.
Sure.
That's great. Think Do other select board members have comments? Oscar?
I think it would be, I think we should consider coming up with some kind of simple policy that we can apply uniformly to cases like this. I don't know, I guess I'm curious, I'm excited about the event. It sounds like it'll be a lot of fun. It sounds like it'll be well attended. I liked the previous ones this year. Let's take a hypothetical scenario where somebody wanted to host 4 big events every month. That would become a cost. That would be a real problem. Do we have any history of dealing with a situation like that? And should we think about some kind of policy that we can apply more evenly than just like, oh, it seems you've had a couple big rallies this month, so we want to ask for a contribution or something.
I think
like
we
that.
do need to come up with a policy, but we're not going to come up with a policy tonight, nor
Sure.
will we come up with one by Saturday.
Mhm.
So that's why we're asking in good faith for this group to recognize the costs that they will be incurring on our town governance. And what we'll ask for is for John to ask his staff, John, please ask your staff, to come up with a policy that they can bring to the board that we can vote on. John?
So our policy has been for the town to absorb the costs of these larger rallies. We do charge a $25 permit fee. That has been your policy. If you want that changed, we're happy to bring some other ideas to the board for you to consider.
I think that should be changed in 2 ways. First, maybe the fee should be increased, but also there should be a penalty for people who do not seek or do not follow the parade permit rules, because they have been in the past, and I'm not a big fan of scofflaws.
My thought is maybe to all give our thoughts on a policy might be ranging a little far afield for today, so maybe we think about putting a brief discussion of a policy on a future meeting. Mm-hmm. I think I'm comfortable asking for if you would care to voluntarily contribute. I don't think there's no obligation to do so, and it's not something I think we ask. Well, I mean, we just consent agenda to others. So I just want to be clear that I just want to make sure that we are being fair and we're bringing up something that is a cost to the town, but it is voluntary. So.
Well, yes, but I think, Oscar, the reason why this has come up is because the scale of this is much larger than the other 2 that we just approved and from others that have happened. And I think that in recognition of what's happening in the nation and the community, there'll be more. And so not only do we need a policy, but that's why we're asking now.
Yeah.
Please.
So, and John, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. I've organized like several 5Ks and events like that, and there have been occasions where police weren't required, so there was nothing there. But if there were, we were to contract with the sheriff's department or the police department, and then we would be responsible for paying those services directly. If there was one time where we were required to have EMS services there, and that had to come out of our bottom line. So I think that is already sort of there. But in the vein of strong appreciation for what you're doing, and not wanting to lose that energy, I appreciate that. But there, as Liz pointed out, these things are growing in size, and it's going to present a little bit of a larger line item budget. So, but am I incorrect?
Yes, I believe if...
Yes, I'm incorrect?
No. Yes, I believe you're correct.
Okay.
There is a mechanism to do that in ordinance, but it would have to be, I think, made a condition of the permit, which has not been our policy to do that generally. Some of the road races, like the example, the one that you approved on consent, that the roads are already
closed, right.
and the police and the fire department are already staffed up for the same event that's happening on that day,
right.
So it's not an additional cost.
It's already there. So yeah, that was one of the points I was going to make on
So,
that particular race.
I have a question as well.
Yes.
Yeah, so the common is under the jurisdiction of Rec and Parks. Is there a fee for renting the common?
Yes, there is.
So there's going to be food trucks, and there's an established fee beyond a parade permit for activities on the common, but I don't see that has been filed.
That is done on a separate process.
Okay.
Yep.
And by Carol nodding her head, I'm assuming that that's been done. I even
Great.
got a thumbs up, so.
It's just not in the, okay, great.
So-
And the other question I have is, so when Strolling of the Heifers happened, for example, and it was the Brattleboro Common, and they paid a fee to Rec and Parks for the use of the common? And, because it's a similar, I mean, if we're talking about a lot of people, it's a similar kind of thing. I don't know if we charged more for them.
It was a much, I apologize for not hollering up there. It was a much larger scale event. So there was a big umbrella fee, and everything was included in that, whether it was police and fire and common rental versus an individual rental, because it was a much larger scale event, and it was handled much differently in an isolated situation on an annual basis.
Got it. On an annual.
So, let's,
We need a motion, yeah.
yes, let's have a motion, and we'll let these good people go, and then we'll ask the town manager to address the broader policy implications.
All right, well, with that, I motion to approve a parade permit for Indivisible Brattleboro to hold a march and rally in downtown Brattleboro on Sunday, June 14th, 2025.
Saturday.
It's Saturday, isn't it?
It's
Yeah.
Saturday.
June
Saturday, all right.
About that?
We'll amend that to Saturday. Yeah, I thought it was Saturday. All right, so on Saturday, June 14th, 2025, from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m., as presented, well, as amended.
As presented.
To show the Saturday as opposed to Sunday, as written.
Good job.
And just to clarify, we're not closing any roads.
Right.
We're on the sidewalk.
You're on the sidewalk. Very good, thank you. All right, so Peter has made a motion to approve a parade permit for Indivisible Brattleboro to hold a march and rally in downtown Brattleboro on Saturday, June 14th, from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. as presented and as amended. All select board members in favor of that motion, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 And there we are. You have your 5-0. Thank you very much, and I'll see you Saturday.
We hope you see it.
Pickleball court project. I think we're going to ask Carol to hobble on over to the table.
Yes.
No wheelies through here, though.
Oh,
Can I?
Yes.
I don't know what is proffer here, but can I? There's.
Okay, go ahead.
I think, Marta, are you about
The glass people are here and.
Okay, that was approved on the consent agenda, so, okay. The Sam's Glass World's tobacco permit thing.
Carol, tell us about the pickleball court project.
All right. Good evening. At first, I'd like to introduce myself, Carol Lott, Recreation and Parks Director. But with me this evening is Joe Little from our citizen group. He's an avid pickler and has been very instrumental in helping us raise some funds for this very worthwhile project. I'd like to start by giving you some background before we get into reviewing the bids. The Recreation Department was met at a crossroads when we are looking at our tennis facility. The current facility, the Fred Harris tennis courts, were built in the mid-'70s, and we have been coddling them along over the years between repainting them, filling cracks, various things over the year to get us to where we are today. At the last time we had the cracks filled, which was about 2 years ago, the vendor goes, Carol, this is the last time. You know, we're not going to be able to stretch this any further. So as that crossroad that I was telling you about, many of you have heard about pickleball and the pickleball craze and what a trend it is for not just Brattleboro, but across the country. So we were faced with looking at, do we replace what we have with 2 tennis courts? Do we do a combo tennis pickleball? Or do we do a dedicated 6 pickleball courts? And looking at that and looking at the broader picture and other people that we collaborate with the community, we thought, okay, Brattleboro Union High School has 6 beautiful courts. Why can't we work together with them and enter into a memorandum of understanding so that we can utilize the 6 beautiful courts that they have? One of the biggest things that we wanted to, going into that, one of my biggest concerns was we have a very strong senior tennis program. So we're like, even though it's during the school day, we still wanted to have a very strong and viable tennis program for seniors. So part of the negotiation process with the high school was, we know it's during the school day, but can we still utilize those courts during the school day? And they went into it, yes, as long as you are willing to work with us on, if we give you a 2-week notice and we're having a tennis program, that your tennis program won't happen. And what I said in return, absolutely, and what you can put into your program is programming at Living Memorial Park for pickleball. So if you have your PE classes and you'd like to bring them to Living Memorial, this could be a win-win for everybody going all the way around. So over a 2 or 3 month period, I was meeting with the administration at the high school, meeting with their facilities person, meeting with their athletic director, and we came up with a solid document that was reviewed by their administration, by their attorney, by the town's administration, by the town's attorney, and we came up with a solid document that was signed in January of 2025. So that once we made that decision that we were going to go in those 2 different directions, we decided, how can we improve Brattleboro and how can we improve the pickleball situation? So knowing what budgets were, I knew that I was not going to be able to put $150,000 into the town budget to get 6 new pickleball courts. So I surrounded myself with people like Joe and said, that are avid picklers, and took the momentum that we had of the $30,000 in the special projects fund as a seed and momentum to launch a capital fund drive. And we've taken that $30,000 and turned it into $141,000 towards $150,000 capital improvement for the town of Brattleboro. So we put this project out to bid in April. We opened bids about 2 weeks ago on the 21st of May. We received 3 bids, one from Monroe, New Hampshire, Vermont Recreational Surfacing. We received 2 local bids, one from DMI Paving and one from Vermont Roadworks. As I outlined in your memo, with raising that $140,000, we brought in $30,000, as we just spoke about, in the Special Projects Fund, $65,000 from grants, trusts, and foundations, and private donations of those that are pickleball users and pickleball advocates of over $30,575, and then local businesses and organizations amounting to $15,800, which brings us to our total that we've raised to date, $141,375. Typically, I'm sitting here before you and saying, and recommending the low bid. I'm not recommending the low bid this evening. And the reason I'm not recommending the low bid is because the low bid is not a local bid. But the next lowest bid is only $3,200 away. And with raising all this money locally, I feel it would be important to give this project to a local vendor who will also be using a local subcontractor, and they would be going out of town to have the professional lines painted. So there would be 2 of the contractors would be local, and 1 contractor would come from out of town. And it's for this reason that not only the Recreation and Parks Department, but the fundraising committee is recommending to the board that the award be awarded to DMI Paving for $129,987.
Carol, there's a reason you got an ovation at the last town meeting. and let's call it up again, because this is amazing. And you have literally spun $30,000 into $141,000, and I applaud you for it, and I thank you for it, and I thank Joe as well.
We had a crew of 5.
And your crew of 5, and I'm sure people have questions. I have some, but I'll wait. Others?
Just a statement. So I remember the night that we approved the let's look into it to the tune of $30,000 thing, and to me that always sort of felt like just a waste of money. So first, I want to thank you for doing what I would have appropriately done with it and figured out a way to raise more with it. And I also agree with you I like the fact that we're doing this locally. Let's use a local contractor. So I like all that. I really don't have any questions. Again, when it comes time for all of us to applaud you again, we will.
Thank you. I'd love to make a motion, but if someone has more questions.
I do have some questions, Oscar.
Just a couple assorted ones. First, again, amazing work. Thank you. I'm going to just ask a few questions from the tennis end, because I'm a tennis player and we are naturally fearful and distrustful of pickleball players. So,
Pickle versus tennis.
So I'm thinking about tennis players who used to play on the Living Memorial courts and just I don't even have I hope we'll be thinking about ways to make clear what the new system is at the high school, I think the thing I'd most like to avoid is somebody showing up and ready to play and then saying like, oh God, there's a tournament today or something and now I have to go home. So I'm sure you've already thought about that, but.
Right, and that was part of the discussion with BUHS is, really making sure that we were hammering that message home when we were advertising not just the first spring, but every spring going forward. Tennis is happening, tennis courts are open, pickleball courts are open. Okay, these are the times you can, and these are the times you cannot.
And there'd be signage on the courts, on the pickleball courts. So if somebody shows up there.
As well, in both locations. If you go to the high school and you want to play pickleball, it's going to say, go to Living Memorial. You're going to be at Living Memorial and you're just going to show up there. You might not know the system yet. It's going to say, go to Brattleboro Union High School and will outline, what that is. Kind of like what I said, we're going to have some extra funding here. Signages and benches and beautifications is what that money will be used for. So we have a good education to the community.
Great. And then just one other thought, and this may be a bridge too far, or this may be for a year down the road. I think if I were using either of these programs, the idea of some public scheduling app, something like that, where I could book a court would be incredible. I think the ones that the tennis clubs in town use, I'm going from memory, but I think they're like $20 a month for the whole software. So that's just another idea to float out there.
Yeah, and we use a program for registrations, reservations, that's called RecTrack. And we haven't used it for this, but it certainly has the capability, and we can, if we start to get to that stage, whether it be at the pickleball situation or the tennis, we'll be able to work through it within a system that we're already using through RecTrack.
Cool, awesome, sounds great.
And I was just wondering, are there restrooms available?
So restrooms is a challenge. So the straight answer is sometimes. During the summer, when we have summer camp, the bathrooms are always open. And so they're able to go in there during summer camp. The bathrooms at the bottom of the hill are open, but it's a jump in your car type of situation. Sure. So on a regular basis, no, not unless we unlock the tennis court, the skating facility. But maybe that's another avenue we need to raise some money for.
Great, that'd be nice. And what about at the high school?
At the high school, they always seem to have a portalet out in the parking lot there.
I think my daughter had to climb a fence to get to the porta potty the other day.
Well, I don't know about that. Not sure if we want to encourage that. But yeah, those are some of the questions. I think during the school day when the senior program is there, I suspect that they would let them go in. But it's the after hours stuff that and I do know, like if you were to go up there tonight, there's access, but I'm not sure. I just can't give you a straight answer. Is that portalet inside the fence or outside the fence? I know it's out in the park. I know it's in the parking lot.
If you could just continue to work on those items that Oscar mentioned of myself, that'd be great.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyone else? Amanda, did you want to make a motion?
Sure. I move to accept the bid for the pickleball court project from DMI Paving for a total of $129,987,000.
Great. Amanda has made a motion to approve the pickleball project, to accept the bid for the pickleball court project from DMI Paving for a total of, I'm sorry, I've forgotten to ask for public comment. Is there public comment on this project? Well, that wasn't much of an interruption then, was it? All right. Amanda has made a motion to accept the bid for the pickleball court project from DMI Paving for a total of $129,987. All select board members in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
That's 5-0. Carol, Joe, we thank you so much.
Great work. Thank
Job
you.
well done.
Thank you. I just want to mention one last thing that I failed to mention is, for the listening public, is the timeline for this. This coincides with another project, upgrading the R22 at the skating rink. So this project will likely not happen until late September, early October.
Okay. But this September?
Yeah, that's the plan.
Super.
If the other project, you know how projects go.
It may not get completed if it doesn't get going until later, so it'll be first thing in the spring.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much.
Might get the paving down, but the painting might have to wait until the spring.
Yeah.
It might be nice to imagine where the lines are.
So get out there and play tennis, Oscar, before they change.
Those courts are pretty unhappy these days. So.
Yeah, they
It makes you a better player. You don't know which way the ball's going to bounce.
Right.
True.
That's right.
All right. The FY26 draft utility budget.
Yeah, and so we'll invite Dan Tyler and Pete Lynch up to the table while they're coming up. So this is a draft of the FY26 utility budget. No, not looking for any decisions tonight, but kind of a presentation introducing this topic to you with the hopes of collecting any questions or further information that you may need to have to bring this back at your next meeting for approval before July 1st.
Great.
So, Dan?
Thank you, John. Welcome, Dan,
Thank you.
Pete.
So we're here to talk about the water and sewer utility budget. The water and sewer utility operates as an enterprise fund, totally separate of the general fund. It's funded entirely through customer billing for their water and sewer usage, no taxes involved. The users of the system, there's about 3,500 of them, about 80% residential, and it's about 1.5 million gallons per day on average of treated water and wastewater. So typically the rates are set on a 5-year cycle, and each year we kind of go through the budget and revisit them. FY26 initiates a new cycle, so a new 5-year cycle. And, we're here tonight on the heels of the presentation last meeting about the rate study. So we were kind of working on this in the background as they were wrapping up the study and kind of using that to inform the budget. It's broke down into like the general operating budget, and then there's the capital plan. So just kind of wanted to point out some of the highlights in the operating budget, and maybe we'll stop for questions there and then move on to the capital plan. So you look through and you'll see there's a lot of increases, there's some decreases. Some of the bigger cost increases are wage related and employee costs. So, in total there's about $229,000 in wage increases between COLAs and steps that are owed to employees. And then the employee benefits, things like Social Security, retirement, health insurance, those equal up to another $65,000. So that really carries a lot of the increase you see. There's an additional $25,000 in there for the contract with the new finance consultant that we're working with. You'll see there's a transfer out. So that is a transfer to the general fund that takes care of really all the services that are provided to the utility, financial services, HR, town manager, dispatch services, and there's a formula how those are all for what portion of each of those department budgets is covered by the utility. If you look at the FY25 utility budget, there was $355,000 budgeted for the transfer out. On the general fund, it was budgeted at $375,000. I think that was probably an error in the utility. We've transferred out $375,000. And when we rework the numbers for FY26, we come up with a required transfer out of $395,000. So in terms of this budget, it looks like a pretty big increase, $41,000. But in reality, we transferred out $375,000 in FY25. Also included in this, as part of those wages and benefits, is the 50% of the sustainability coordinator's salary and benefits. That equates to $49,421. And then in each category, there's just like chemicals and parts and general kind of operations types things that we're seeing increases in all of those costs as well. Fortunately, there's some savings too. This is the first full year we've had the water treatment facility online. And as part of that upgrade at Pleasant Valley, we were able to eliminate some pieces of the budget that, as part of that design and construction up there. One thing is the $9,000 in sludge removal. We used to have lagoons up there. There was 2 heart-shaped lagoons that all the processed water from the plant flowed to, and the alum sludge would settle out in those before the water flowed to the brook. We've removed that process, and we've connected the plant to the town wastewater system, so that processed water flows to the wastewater system, and actually the alum helps the wastewater process because it kind of coagulates some of the waste. Also, through that upgrade, that plant is entirely electric. There's no fossil fuels up there. So there was a $13,000 fuel expense line that is now gone. We've seen some increase in electric costs, but with the new controls and technology within the plant, we're able to participate in a pilot program through Green Mountain Power, which is flexible load management. We get a notification that they're expecting a high load on the grid, and we shut down part of our operation it's like a 4-hour period of time. And in turn, we get a discounted rate on our electric. Right now, it's a pilot program. It'll probably carry through another year, and then hopefully there's something permanent that falls in place to follow. Something else to highlight is the section for the Retreat Wells Water Treatment Facility. That's the small facility on Linden Street in the field. So that's a second water treatment facility. Following a drought in the early 60s, that plant was permitted and brought online in 1979 to supplement the water production in town. The intention was for that to be the sole source, and the wells were never able to keep up with it. And over time, they've declined the production. And recently, we've seen some water quality issues there, and that seems to directly relate back to not necessarily the wells, but the facility itself. It's outdated. It's never seen any real upgrades since it was built. We're still trying to evaluate. We kind of had, one of our consultants did a high-level evaluation of the plant, and we're trying to get a feel for what the best thing to do with it is. So we haven't run it since early winter, and you'll see those expenses for the current expenses for FY25 are low. We're recommending keeping those expenses in there until we figure out what we want to do with it. And there's also some other pump station and pressure reducing vault projects that we can reallocate some of that spending to in the meantime to catch up on some deferred maintenance in those areas. And hopefully we'll be able to come back to you in the future with a recommendation on how to move forward with the retreat wells. And I think that's what I've got for highlights on the operating budget. Do you want to stop there before we move on to capital?
Let's ask, before I open it up to my colleagues, can you just repeat that about the sustainability coordinators so that it can be heard in the back of the room, in the public?
Yeah. So we've included half of the salary and expenses for the sustainability coordinator in the operating budget. It's just over $49,000. We think there's a benefit to having that position, part of that position within the utility. There's a fair amount of work that's happening now on some prospective grants at the wastewater and water treatment plant. So those efforts would continue, but we've got some ideas around other efforts within the utility. There's some projects at the wastewater plant that are outside of that. The upgrade was in 2012, so we're really kind of approaching the middle of the life and need to start thinking about the next set of improvements there. And we're wrapping up the biostudy solid that was approved last year. There's some recommendations in there that are directly related to kind of the scope of that position, and we think there's a benefit there, which would result in reducing the volume of sludge that we haul away. There's work with contaminants around town. There's, cross connections with stormwater and sewer that we need to sort out. We think maybe there's a opportunity for like a public program there to kind of find some of that. So
Great. Thank you, Dan. Appreciate
potential
it.
there.
And I just have one question. These heart-shaped lagoons, A, why are they heart-shaped? And B, now that they're no longer in use, is there a closure plan for them?
They're gone. I think they were heart-shaped because of the way the outflow was on them. It was just the function of them. They happened to be heart-shaped. They were removed as part of the upgrade at the plant. Now there's a big concrete tank there that all the processed water runs to and then slowly distributes to the wastewater system.
Thank you. Okay, colleagues, you got questions?
It's a really thorough report. Thank you. Yeah, very understandable too.
Okay, so the process, you're going to continue. Please do.
So capital plan, those expenses are in the last page of the budget, but there's a separate capital improvement plan that kind of outlines those. You'll see one of the first columns is a proposed carry forward. That makes up projects that have been budgeted in prior fiscal years that we're still waiting for them to be constructed. Some of it is, there's like the Hinsdale Bridge, for instance. The work on the utility is done there. We're waiting for VTrans to send us the bill. That one should go away soon. The Phase 1 utility project and the water tank project, the review has taken years by the state. We've approved that bond. We've got the funding. We're just waiting for the review from the state. So those things take time. Hopefully we'll see that number getting smaller. But what it's also done is it's kind of given us a backlog of projects. So you'll notice that there's $167,000 budgeted for new money in the water infrastructure, and there's $361,000 for fleet replacements. There's nothing budgeted for sewer upgrades this year. We, working with the rate study and looking at the capital plan, we have a history of cash funding everything, and that was really driving up our rates. So if you look further out in the plan, there's some big numbers that would likely be bonded projects, and that would spread the load out over 30 years or so. And it also moves some of that out and allows us to catch up on some of that backlog of projects. So it's definitely a reduced year for capital. I think one of the projects worth highlighting on those backlog projects is the rebuild of Putney Road. The initial plan VTrans had was very extensive, and to accomplish that, they were going to have to modify our utilities greatly, and it was going to result in some upgrades that need to happen. We have a 10-inch asbestos cement water line up there that is, near the end of its life. We're experiencing water main breaks on it. It needs to be replaced. That was part of that project. We've recently learned that they're visiting the idea of reducing the scope of that project, which sounds like it would also reduce the utility work there. We really don't have the full picture on that. We don't know where it's going. Regardless, that work will need to be done. That water main will need to be replaced. And if they're not going to do it, it seems like there's a window for us to do it. So we've recommended leaving the existing $1.56 million that have been budgeted for that project in there for that future water main replacement. And honestly, those numbers came from VTran. They included some water and sewer upgrades. Expenses have gone up since then. I don't have a great feeling for where that lands on in terms of the cost of that project. I've reached out to VTrans's consultant to try to figure that out, but don't have that yet. What we are proposing is there was $300,000 allocated for FY26 for additional allocation towards that project, which we've removed from the budget until we know what's going on. And then there's some projects that we've completed. Stickney Brook Diversion Dam. We were able to do that work in-house, renting equipment, working with the stream alteration engineer, and found a huge savings there. So there's $99,000 unspent. There's a little bit of work left to do on the intake structure at the dam, but we're recommending transferring, or reallocating $50,000 to the Amesbrook water pump station. There's some money budgeted for a generator upgrade there, but there's some additional concerns that have come up about the pump station itself. It's aging. I think there's an opportunity to wrap the generator into a bigger upgrade, and that money could go towards that. And then on the sewer side, similar story with the Wilson's Wood pump station. We envisioned that as like a total replacement with new structures and everything, and we were able to just replace some of the key components and put it back kind of as existing, and we saved almost $167,000 there. So there's a sewer line in poor condition on Church Street that we are recommending reallocating $70,000 to, and then the additional almost $97,000 towards that wastewater treatment plant kind of midlife upgrade that I spoke to earlier. So that's over $300,000 of kind of reallocation that towards some priority projects without increasing the overall budget. So, and then I guess then it comes down to rates. Last meeting, the consultant spoke about rates. They recommended a 9% increase on the water side and a 3% increase on the sewer side. 9% for the first 2 years on the water side, 3% for the following 3 years, FY 28 to 30. And then on the sewer side, it was a 2% annual increase for the entire 5 years. Our expenses are higher than theirs. They kind of ran their model on a 3% overall increase. On our operating side, we're closer to 5%, but we've reduced a bunch out of the capital. So looking at those rates, it doesn't get us up to where they initially thought in the first 2 years, where, we kind of, instead of jumping right up to that reserve number that they recommended, we kind of cut through the first 2 years and then get up to where we want to be, which, is allocating enough to work towards a reserve target of 90 days of expenses and 2% of our system value. So, they worked on a 10-year target to hit those numbers. So I think the recommendation that they shared last meeting kind of stands for the rates.
Well, thank you very much. And your unsung hero, Pete. Are there questions, board members?
I have a couple questions. If there were an area of the budget that you are showing us right now that you would maybe trim, what would you be? What would the hunch be?
Amanda, I'm not sure that you can be heard speaking into the microphone.
Okay. I think they heard me, but anyway. I'll ask it again. If there's an area of the budget that Dan and Pete thought, would be potentially trimmed. I mean, I see, I'm looking at the chart and I'm seeing some things were budgeted last year that were not used or used less of, like training, for example.
Right.
Also, overtime budgets, but not used, and at the actual. Mm-hmm. So I'm just sort of wondering in terms of budgeting, if anything pops out, or if I'm blowing smoke, just let me know.
No, I mean, there are some things. The utility kind of goes up and down. A lot of it, there's a line in the current year in the sewer pump stations that were way over. We had a pump fail, and it was $40,000, and our budget was, I don't know, 15 maybe or something. So everything's expensive. We kind of try to pick a spot in the middle. Sometimes you go over, sometimes you don't use it all. Things like training, we try to take advantage of local offers that, are less expensive, but there's times where training is necessary and certain classes need to be attended and there's costs. So same with permitting. It's kind of up and down. Our permit cycle, some years there's more permits due for renewal than others. I suppose we could try to hammer down on those a little bit, but, I think those sort of things would be kind of nickel and diming here and there, and I don't know.
Yeah, and then for the revenue side, the Efficiency Vermont line I saw is 0. So with the sustainability coordinator working with utility, are there potential earnings there?
We're in constant contact with them. They've been involved in some of the potential projects at the wastewater plant. That line goes back to a program we participated in previously that, we've completed, and, there's nothing currently planned with them, but yeah, I think that's an area that, that we run into capacity issues where there's opportunities that we might like to take advantage of that we just don't have the capacity to, and hopefully the sustainability coordinator could follow up on some of those. That might be one of those.
Great. Others? Colleagues? Isaac?
I just appreciate the work that you've put into this, and you're giving us this update, and also just want to acknowledge, and I think the chair was having you reiterate this and point this out, the part about the sustainability coordinator, but I just wanted to make the link between that being something that was discussed at representative town meeting, and I appreciate the attempt to accommodate what the representative town meeting body voted for.
Anyone else? Oscar?
Just for the board, just in general, wanted to raise the idea again. I don't even know how I feel about it, but we could get to the same 5-year target by some flat rate increase. Instead of 9.9222, we could think about 5.5% for 5 years so that it's less of a jump up and down. We might not hit our cash targets early, but I think it's something we should kick around.
Dan, that's a question to ask the consultant.
Yeah.
Because
and I've played
there must
with the
be a
model
reason for that.
I've played with the model a little bit, and I just want to confirm it with them. I think that we can probably bring back an alternative. I just not quite comfortable enough with it that I was ready to speak to
I would imagine they want to get to a certain threshold and let compound interest take the rest of the way.
Yep. But we can revisit that.
Very good. All right. Yes, John? Public. What would you like to say about this proposed water sewer budget? We got a thumbs up from the back of the room.
From Frick.
That's always good. Anyone online? Quiet crowd tonight.
I'd love to ask one more question.
Go ahead.
So aging workforce, right, is certainly an issue with this line of work. And I'm wondering kind of what's coming down the pike from a state level or regional level to help excite future workers in this field, because it's tough right now, right, to find people who are knowledgeable enough to work in the...
Vermont Rural Water has been working on an apprenticeship program for the last several years. We've had a couple employees participate in that, where they kind of provide a 2-year batch of training, periodic training, to get them the water licenses they need. So that's something that's happening. There's times where they identify an apprentice and look for a plant to take that person kind of as a additional employee at a reduced rate to kind of get them to where they need to be in the industry. We haven't used it that way. We've used it with new hires. But honestly, we're in the process of hiring a wastewater operator, and we had the strongest pool we've seen in a long time. We would like to hire multiple people from.
That's good news.
Well, that's a good question and a good answer.
I feel like I half saw Pete looking like you wanted to say something there, but
I think Dan hit it on the head. You know, we had a really, really good pool of applicants for our wastewater position, and we have a lot of folks asking about coming to work at DPW, and I attribute that to a lot of work that's been done by Dan and the staff to find efficiencies in our operation, to be very welcoming to people that are walking through the door, and to create an environment where people want to come and work. They really care about what they're doing. So it's really good news that that's backed up by a really strong pool of candidates for the wastewater treatment job.
Thank you, Pete. All right, if there's no further questions, I'll thank you again. And then what's the process? You'll come to us at our next meeting for us to vote on a budget?
Yep.
Right. And we'll need to do an ordinance change for the rates.
Yeah, which we probably won't do at your next meeting. We can do that in July, but.
Yep.
Great. Thank you both very much. All right. Proposed FY26 parking budget.
Yes, so we're going to invite a few people up to the table. Darren Pacheco has been helping Assistant Chief Evans with the parking budget. And there's a whole team that's been working on that behind the scenes. And again, same thing as in the utility budget, not looking for a decision tonight, but we'll do a presentation of this and ask you to give us any questions you have or things that you want to bring back to your next meeting to hopefully make a decision about the FY26 parking budget. So turn it over to you guys.
Thank you, sir. Jeremy Evans, I'm the Assistant Police Chief, and Darren Pacheco here.
Yeah.
Highway Super, right?
Yep.
All right. So here to talk to you about parking. Before we get through, I'm going to speak to part of it, and then Darren's going to speak to part of it. So as we go through, if you have any questions, you could just, if there's any way you could hold them until we're both done. That way.
I think we can do that.
All right. Appreciate it. So I'm going to talk about where we were moving through FY25 and how that's looking for us as the year's closing out. So we've had some great, really actually fantastic collaboration between DPW and parking, the police department, town manager's office. Shout out to Carol, Cheryl, and Keegan in parking. They've been fantastic for us, really helpful with the transition process we've had here with parking moving back into the police department after about 15-ish years after the departure of our finance director and then our assistant town manager. So that's been a little bit of a challenge, but it's been good. We've worked through it really well, and I really just account that to the great collaboration we've had, the strong working relationships we've created, which has been really great. So last year, the select board worked out a decision to execute a 2-year plan to get the parking fund back in the profit margin again. Profit's important for the parking fund because that's what covers all of the costs related to plowing, other maintenance, the upkeep of the lots, the repaving, the painting the lines, to making sure the lots are clean and removing any safety issues or whatever that would come from it. So it's important that we have a profitable parking system that can pay for all those things without having to go to the tax base and ask for them to pay for it. The FY25 that we're working off of was what came through last year that you folks received from Assistant Town Manager Moreland. And that did show us having a deficit coming into this year that was projected around $89,000, $90,000. That's, if we go back to FY24, just to give you a little bit, FY24 we had about a $356,000 deficit in parking. Coming out of COVID, we'd really lost all sorts of income coming through that. Last year, we made a bunch of changes, both revenue-wise with fee changes and also with the parking system itself changes to try and make it financially solvent again. We see those things happening. We had a little, I guess you could say, setback last year just because it took us longer to implement some of the changes that we had planned, just due to time and workforce and whatnot. So it took us a few months longer to get those implemented, which pushed back our revenue projections for the year, because those revenue projections have been put together on the new funding package being put in probably in like August, September, and that didn't actually happen until the end of November before it was actually fully implemented. And by then we had some difficulties with the transition, as we all know, that I don't need to go over again with everyone, that we've worked through. We also had basically the month of December with free parking, which was that's a pretty good month normally, that we didn't have much of any pay for parking. So we came out of FY24 with the 356 deficit in it. This year we're projecting, instead of the 89, we're projecting probably about 165,000 deficit coming into this year. And then next year moving forward, Darren will get to in a minute, where we're looking to show actual positive on the numbers. So like I said, that shortfall we saw was basically due to revenue in a couple different places. One was meter revenue that was down while we did the transition, and we had the lower rates for longer than we anticipated. And also permit sales in general, but also permit sales in the parking garage. As you all know, we had some issues in the parking garage that caused a lot of difficulty in getting permits in the parking garage. So we had a decrease in parking in the parking garage, people buying permits for it. We do see that changing. We've done some things public safety-wise in the town with the Brat unit, and putting more officers downtown. That is really, we've received a great deal of positive feedback on. That has changed a lot of perception downtown and actual real changes, which has been great. We've worked with DPW on numerous different ways, like keeping the parking lots cleaner and safer, which is, I think, has shown us some really good dividends. So moving forward, we do see the positive revenue happening, and I will move over to Darren and let him go from there.
Yeah, so just to kind of touch base on the FY25 too, I think there's three big revenues that we collect. Like Jeremy said, they are the pay for parking, our permit revenue, and then also it used to be our transportation revenue for rental, which we no longer receive a whole lot of. We've actually been, and the famous Pete Lynch has been doing a lot of outreach, and hopefully we can get those spaces rented this coming year, which will help huge on the revenue side. I put together the projections for the ending of FY25, so they're rough. Basically took previous data that we've been receiving from expenses and both revenue side to make those projections. So those are rough, but we are looking at probably a higher deficit, like Jeremy said, than that original 89,000 that we projected. And I just want to speak, and we'll revisit this shortly, that deficit will actually put our unallocated cash balance to $233,447,000 because we will use the unallocated cash balance to cover that deficit. So yeah. And then my one question is, do you want to ask questions on FY25 before we move into FY26, or would you like just keep rolling? Okay, keep rolling. So looking at FY26, our projected here, we have a projected 11.7% increase on the revenue, which is $1,034,000 $8. The reason we have such a high projection for this is, one, that these new rates that got implemented so late in the season will now be implemented throughout the full year. So that was mainly the main reason for that large 90,000 increase, as you can see on the parking revenue. And then the other would be the parking fines, right? Yep, parking fines, which we're seeing. I'm sorry. Am I reading that wrong? No, it is parking. Sorry. Yeah, I might need your glasses. Which we're actually doing well with right now. We actually are. Our revenue in parking fines for FY25 are over our projected that we budgeted for FY25. So the parking enforcement team is doing well. Just in the last 2 months, they've done a huge chunk of that revenue and really stepped up. So we brought that up as well. And then to the expenses, we're looking at, we really did a whole lot of trying to not have a huge increase here, because knowing we want to try to move the budget out of a deficit. So we only have a 0.4% increase on the expenses, and that cash number is $4,880.16. The reason we were able to really dial down this number was hugely because of OpenGov having better projections on our staff expenses. Our original budget for staff salaries was higher than it needed to be, so we were able to cut that down quite a bit and give us more accurate numbers. Some of the other costs or things we were able to kind of cut out there to kind of, bring that expense line down was really more related to staff. We looked at a couple others that, just kind of small operating expenses that we felt like we could take a little bit out of. Things that have increased, we really tried to keep that really down low. The biggest one is the expense for the finance part of that, just like Dan had spoke to on the utility side. And then the rest is pretty much inflation costs with utilities and things like that. So we're really hoping that we can hit these projections, and the biggest part of that is the new oversight with the police department. We're really hoping that they can enhance schedules, impose better enforcement, and improve parking conditions, like Jeremy said, to really crack down and get to those revenue numbers that we really want to project. I can kind of speak to, I know we've been looking at data. With this new system, we collect a lot of data, which has been fantastic for us. And it's really showing us where we're actually generating revenue and where we're not. And that's going to help Jeremy moving forward on how we can make some of these changes to improve. So we are basically seeing, like, one of our big things I've talked about in the past is that the Brattleboro Transportation Center is not generating the revenue it used to, but parking lots like Harmony and High Grove are actually becoming the top revenue generators in our parking system. And so moving forward, we would talk about things like looking at this whole dynamic as a supply and demand, right? If we have a higher demand in High Grove, should we be increasing costs to generate more revenue? And then look at the transportation center where we say we have a lower demand, we want a lower cost to create more demand. And we will speak more about that when we get into the last section of this whole thing. So that's pretty much all I have for the FY26 proposed. I have the last part of this leg, which is following up on recommendations from our previous meeting, which was some ordinance changes and amendments. And I can go through those now if you'd like.
Let me ask my colleagues. Do you want to ask questions about the budget, and then we'll hear about the changes to the parking system?
I'd love to ask questions
Great.
about the budget
Okay.
first.
Amanda, go ahead.
Okay. I'm a slow learner, so bear with me. So the electric line, is that for lighting lots and transportation center and all that stuff, or is that for the?
No, that's for that. Just what you said, lighting in the transportation center, and some lots are pulled from certain different. Most of it is for lighting, like in lots, but there is some lots that kind of get pulled from different areas that may not be under there. But majority is like yes, like you said.
And also, how many staff total
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to say.
are budgeted for the parking?
There's 5 staff members that are under this budget. 3 of them are enforcement, and then the other 2 are facility maintenance employees who do a lot of the cleaning and maintenance of like the transportation center.
Okay, and that overlaps all through DPW, or they're just designated for the facility maintenance, just for those?
They're overseen by DPW, the 2 facility maintenance employees, and they're basically have assigned days to the transportation center.
Gotcha. Okay. And then also, like, okay, where's this one? So employee retirement, like that's, am I looking at the right thing? Or am I looking at, no, what am I looking at? Something that went down quite a bit, or went up quite a bit.
Health insurance?
No, I think I was just, yeah, no.
Workers' comp?
Yeah, great, thank you. Those are my questions.
Okay. Oscar, do you have questions?
No, not yet.
Anyone else?
It just seems silly to me. I noticed that there's a line for hood rentals. What are we hooding?
So the hood rentals were for, like if a contractor wanted to rent a couple spaces to do work on, let's say, your building, they would have to go down to the enforcement office and rent those parking spaces. So the word hood rental used to be the hood that went over the single meter that we no longer use. So that is that revenue line you're seeing.
Okay, thank you.
I did actually see one. Okay, so the workers' comp line went way down.
So
what happened?
I don't know.
Like
so
magic.
This was numbers that were crunched by our financial Bonnie, and I know that they thought that some of those numbers were kind of high and could be moved to, and maybe John can answer that better. Those were brought forward to us for the staff expenses.
Yeah, we can bring explanation of that back at your next meeting.
Oh, cool.
Okay, so I don't have a question. I just wanted to thank you because this is the year that we've come out of COVID with a budget that our expenses match our revenues. And it's been difficult. And, you know, we're doing this even though the transportation center is not renting any space. So I appreciate the work that's gone into that, and a lot of it is public safety. So thank you.
And Madam Chair, I apologize. I missed one really big part of this, which is the capital of the parking as well for the budget. So just a quick, just to cover this before we move on.
Oh, yeah.
So last year as well with the changes, staff had recognized the urgency to create a capital plan for our assets and parking, which would be our parking lots, the transportation center, and the assets that we use to pay for parking every day. And so we have completed some of the FY25 projects, like the fire alarm and the addition of the kiosk. But things like the grant match and the stairs will be rolling over into FY26. So I actually printed the wrong sheet off myself, but I believe that number that's rolling over is around 116,000. And then a 170,000 will be added for FY26, which we're going to be seeing the stair project get completed, looking at parking lots like the municipal lot, which will be allocated money for paving of the municipal center lot, and then just some general maintenance repairs in the transportation center. So
Great.
that's also attached to your backup material.
There's a hand in the back room. Are there any comments online, Seth? Okay, Frick?
Frick Sprite, District 9 Rep. Patrick, before he left, tried to bring some more attention to the issues with the parking garage, which had been kind of orphaned over the years after being built in a way that was going to require maintenance, and it hasn't been. I was wondering if in that budget it included sandblasting and painting the steel, which is not galvanized and therefore needs regular attention before it becomes structurally unsound.
Let me just object to the word orphanized, because our town has been spending a great deal of time, attention, and money on
You can object all you want.
maintaining
the fact is
and
that
policing.
that particular facility has not gotten attention to the structural elements since it was built. That is a fact. You can object all you like, but that is a fact. The structural steel should have been galvanized if it was going to be a long-term sustainable project. It was not. It was painted. Because it was painted, just like any seagoing vessel that has painted steel and has to deal with salt and water on a regular basis, it needs paint on a regular basis.
And that attention has been.
And so my question is that in that maintenance budget? And then I have a further question about the rental space.
So to your answer, I think one person, when you get to the rental, I think Pete Lynch would probably be best to answer that. But to talk about the painting of the steel, there is money allocated for that work, and there is for it in the plan for the next 10 years. There's money to allocate X amount of dollars for every year for painting of the steel is actually what the line item is called. So, and there's items with the stairs, joints, membrane, all that, which gets money allocated every year for it. So,
And Frick, let me remind you, your questions come to me. I bring them to the expert.
So,
Do you have additional questions?
yes, I had gone over the whole parking garage with Patrick and brought to the town some strong recommendations about how to make this space, the enclosed space that was being used by Dottie's and the thrift shop, actual conditioned spaces. It was built as though that space was still part of the parking garage, not space that was intended to be conditioned spaces that was inhabited by things that didn't want to get wet or needed heat. And I would be happy to go into specifics again, or
Are you
talk with Pete
asking
Lynch
a
about
question? Is there a question in there?
I was wondering what happened with that whole process.
That project, the sealing of the garage in the spaces for Dottie, is underway now.
Yeah, there's a project to do that right now.
What are the specs? Is it being done? What's the plan?
We'd be happy to sit down with you, Frick, if you want to go over the details of that.
Okay.
Okay.
When?
Make an appointment.
Okay. Thank you.
Susan?
Susan Belleville, Brattleboro. I've got one question. Are the trash cans going back into Harmony Lot? And
if you'd like me, I can answer.
Yes.
If you're talking about the single trash receptacles around, recently we worked with Casella on moving some of the trash receptacles around the lots to make them more accessible for them when they do pickups in the morning. So there's currently 6 of those still in Harmony. They are just in different locations. I did actually have a meeting with some members of the DBA who had concerns today, and there's plans to move 2 of them and add another 2 to hopefully put everyone's mind at ease for trash receptacles in the Harmony lot.
thank you. I just had to pick on you. I knew you were meeting with DBA today, so I was just picking on you. I do want to say to both crews here, I have had interactions with all the personnel, or a good number of the personnel that work in DPW, and I am very impressed with how kind they are, how informative they are, and how incredibly helpful in explaining situations that I've been involved with all of them. They've been fabulous to work with.
Thank you very much, Sue. All right. Yes.
Marta Gossage. I have a question. Just
For
going
me.
back about, I don't know how many months back, there were some questions about electric charging stations in the transportation center. And some people had said that they might rent a spot if there were electric charging stations, or there had been and they came out or something. Can you clarify what the plan is for that?
Marta, ask me.
Oh, sorry. Can you clarify what the plan is for that?
I will. John, you want to answer that?
Yeah, I believe that we had some chargers in there that we could no longer get the parts for. They were basically aged out, and so we removed those. If we can get funding to put additional chargers in there, then we'll be able to replace them. But we don't have a budget for that right now.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Penny.
So, it's Penelope Were. So I, as you know, sent this letter to everybody on the select board. This isn't really a question so
Well, now,
much.
Penny, we have yet to hear.
Oh, you have yet? Okay, yes. Sorry, it was because, then let me
Yeah.
wait till you're done, because that's
That'd be
totally
great.
fine.
Thank you very much. Okay.
I have one more question.
Go right ahead.
I feel like my questions are so annoying. I'm really sorry. So snow removal. I want to hear about snow removal. Why is the snow removal budget number so high? Is it
Maybe because there's a lot of
is it,
snow.
but is it handwork around
So-
the area, or is it
Yeah, I'll give
labor
you just-
hours, or a specific machine, or
Yeah, I'll give you a little breakdown. So there's 11 lots between both just town lots and then also fire department lots and the police department lots. So we do we write a bid out for those lots to be plowed and also have snow removed from during winter time. I will say that the PD does cover the expenses for their lot under the general fund, but the majority of those others are covered from here, the parking budget. So within our bid, we have policies that need to be met. So it's like every 2 inches it snows, there needs to be cleared. And so we use that budget line to pay contractors. And then another policy we have is that 24 hours after a snowstorm, that snow has to be removed. And that's at an hourly rate. So if we get big snowfalls, it's an hourly rate for the loader, the truck, the trailer, whatever it is. And so in previous years, we actually have underspent that line just from the mild winters, and we had a more significant winter this year, so we're over. Staff saw that, and we feel like going into FY26, we increased it slightly, but we feel like we can make some changes within the bid itself and how we put that out to contractors, and then also see how staff may be able to help kind of knock out some of that work. And so when I say that way, I don't want people to think that the general fund would be covering it. It would be a way of like, could we somehow have like the general fund and the expenses somehow crossed, if you know what I mean? Like, we currently do that somewhat now with if you look on there, there's a DPW lot maintenance line. And so that's from DPW doing maintenance, cleaning, and kind of maintenance work in the lot. So it'd be kind of the same thing for plowing, just we may have to fluctuate those if we were to have DPW do some different work in the future.
Okay, so no questions online? I know you're about to discuss the parking meters and so forth, but I think we should have a 5-minute break.
Yep.
And so let's have a break and come back at 8:30. 8:07, or, no, 8:12. Now, which one of you gentlemen is discussing the parking, the meters?
I'm going to cover a couple different things that we spoke about at the last meeting, and I will kind of go one by one real quick with them. We'll do questions, everything at the end. But the first was Sunday parking. So originally we talked about Sunday parking and wanting to move that back to a free day, which would help, some feel would help improve merchants to bring residents down there for shopping. And to do that, we felt that if a Sunday went back to free, we would need to try to add hours to Monday through Saturday to offset that revenue. So in your packet, you'll actually see I did some figures for you. I did December 2024 through April of 2025. And it will show what we've generated for each one of those months on Sundays alone.
Let me just interrupt you to say that this is on page 71 of 257 in your backup. Go ahead.
Sundays shows a line for the total paid revenue. I just added that for reference, but then it also shows Sunday revenues for each month. And then I did, at the bottom column, I did Monday through Saturdays from 4 to 6. Those are the last 2 hours that we enforce now. While you look at those numbers, you can tell that they're generally close on revenue cost, and some months Sundays generated more, and some months that last 2 hours did. The only thing is that we're looking at kind of a ghost number here, right? These are the last 2 hours from 4 to 6. We don't know if those same figures would show from 6 to 8. And so with the Sunday, what we'd be looking for is to move forward with is your guys' recommendation on how an ordinance would want to be written, whether we are looking to bring Sundays back to free parking, or are we looking to bring Sundays back to free parking with additional hours from those 2 additional hours after 6 o'clock to bring it to 8, or are we looking just to leave it how it is? And so that would be the first one we would talk about. The next one would be about parking permits. So as like I spoke to before, the parking permits are not hitting the margins we would hope so. So the biggest thing, and I kind of broke it down, and that's just this part section is just under that original data table we were just looking at. So I broke it out on how where we sell parking permits and how they're kind of sold. So we sell parking permits in Elm Street lot, the Transportation Center, and then we have a conjoined permit, which is Harris, High Grove, and Spring Street. When I say that, it means a resident or an individual could buy a permit and they can park in any one of those parking lots. Elm Street itself is a permit-only lot. We do not actually sell any parking there. And what we've noticed lately is that we are not selling many permits there, and the lot is pretty much empty. The lot is kind of far out of town for anyone to really use, and so my hope is that we could find a way to somehow rejuvenate that parking lot, bring people there. And there was 2 recommendations I brought forward. It was to extend parking enforcement down Flat and Frost, because currently there's free parking right next to that parking lot. So why would an individual park in the free parking spot than the lot, or than the lot itself? And then so the other was to lower the price, maybe that we could sell more permits in a lot that's not being utilized. We do sell some permits to the co-op, but they have recently wanting to look for different lots because of the distance of walking from that lot. The next would be the Transportation Center that we sell permits in. We sell 3 different types of permits in this lot. We sell a travel permit that a traveler who's coming in just for a few days can buy. We also sell just a normal permit. And then we sell the reserved permit The reserve permit is the kind of the nice locations in the lot closer to the Elliott Street entrance. Looking at these permits, again, numbers have dropped dramatically here. We are selling a lot of the reserve parking permits, but not selling nearly any of the just general permits in this. So that's part of the reason that we're losing revenue there. And I sent in page, I guess it would be 73. This isn't a chart that shows permit revenues, but it's a chart that shows over the years the number of people parking in the transportation center. And it just kind of shows an idea of like what's happening there. So in 2019, you can see that we were, making quite a bit of more money than we did in 2020, 2021, 22, 23, so on, so on. And so it's starting to show that trend that we are seeing less and less parking happening in the transportation center. And then lastly would be the Harris, High Grove, and Spring Street.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
I just wanted to confirm, are the 2025 numbers right? They're really that low?
So the confusing part about this, and it takes me time to do it, and I can do it if you'd like. Those are the years, not FY25.
Oh, calendar years.
So yeah,
Got it.
so like that's why it's so low.
So
Perfect.
It's to date.
Yeah,
25.
Yeah, and I can, if you were to ask, like I can try to break it out. It's a lot more trying to run the system to do different dates. It's challenging. Sometimes.
No, that's okay. But so 2025 is like January through April or something like that.
Yeah, yep, and exactly. And I did actually look at that. For example, credit card in 2025 is only at like 4,800. Looking at projections, it will probably be around 15,000. So it's a little lower than last year. So those numbers will be relatively close, I believe, for 2024, but still no increase on like revenue in the transportation.
But mobile looks way up if that's just a quarter. Or if that's just 3 or 4 months, is that?
So mobile, we've seen an increase
Okay.
across the board in all lots and on street. The last permit parking, which has actually become our favorite permit to purchase, is the Harris, High Grove, and Spring Street. We don't actually track where an individual parks. We just track how many permits we sell. We're basically selling out of these, but by visual, it seems that most of those permits are parking in the High Grove lot. And so, like if I said before previously, if we look at this as supply and demand, our High Grove lot has become our favored lot. Should we be looking at increasing cost because it's got a higher demand and to generate more revenue? The next, after the permits, we'll be talking about the formal appeals. So I've been working great with IPS. IPS is the vendor that we use our pay method, but not our enforcement. And so I've been working with them as they do offer software for enforcement that really kind of coincides with a lot of these recommendations we're making. So as we pay for pay by plate, their permit process that IPS offers is also a permit by plate. And so when you go on to permit or buy a permit, your plate is the permit. So we don't have to hand out any more placards or stickers or any of that stuff. And this all can be done online as well. You can generate as many different types of permits as you want on this system. And so if I were to go buy a permit, I can either go down to enforcement and purchase that permit. I can do it online, and if I do it online, I just click whatever type of permit I want, and I can purchase it. Then it would show on the enforcement app that my plate number would come up every time, and it would show that I'm a permit holder. So this could be one way to help generate more revenue in permits, and it also could make it easier because currently, right now, an individual has to go down to the enforcement office to purchase a permit.
How much does that software cost?
So looking at it, currently, right now, we're spending about $15,000 for T2 enforcement. IPS does it a little differently. They have a lower annual cost, but they collect part of the processing fee. So anytime that any service is done online or paying a ticket or buying a permit, they get a part of that processing fee. So that's kind of how they create, that's how they get their portion of the cost. And so I will have better figures. They haven't sent me the kind of finalized numbers, but that is something we're looking at.
Thank you.
And then the last would be the loading zones. We really kind of looked into this, and after getting into the whole loading zones, it was kind of determined that if we made designated loading zones in this area, it was going to be unfair to one merchant or the other. And so we kind of scratched this and felt just additional signage and road markings would help us kind of be able to enforce those areas better. So that would be our recommendation with loading zones. And from there, we'll have questions on those 4 different considerations, and with hope that we can find what you're looking for to bring back a first reading for ordinance amendments or changes.
Great. Thank you, Darren. Board members, do you have questions? Oscar?
Questions and also just general.
Go right ahead.
Stuff? Okay, so let's see. Personally, the idea of adjusting our permit fees based on supply and demand makes a ton of sense to me. The reason I asked for some of this transaction info was because I think we should consider looking at the lots, the rates themselves in that way. I mean, you talked about it a little with the transportation center, but if nobody's using it, particularly relative to Harmony and these other lots, should we lower the prices? I think it's something we should look at. Particularly with the transportation center, which seems to be really having a hard time, I think it might be an interesting idea to lower the rates below anything else in town, put some signage up that talks about, lower the rates and remove the 2 or 3 hour requirements. So all day parking, and put up some signs using language like, long-term economy parking, arrow this way, go into the transportation center, park there all day. Because during the day, the high demand lots are really crushed. And also, the more people are using the BTC, the more comfortable a place will be to be in. If that place is 3/4 full and people are constantly going to and from their cars, it'll feel livelier. This is coming from a couple people I've talked to, that the numbers on switching from Sunday parking to evening look okay, but with the parking fund having run a deficit, do we want to consider erring on the side of revenue and keeping Sunday and adding the evenings? I think that's something we should think about. And then the other big thing that I promised to bring up to a couple people is, have we had a conversation about looking for a different parking app? Because I'm sure there were good reasons, probably cost-related reasons for the ones we chose, but I think I have a better experience in Keene and Greenfield, and was wondering if that came up this time around. So those are my assorted parking thoughts for now.
Yeah. I'll answer all 3 of those. So looking at the supply and demand, I would think it would be beneficial for us to separate every lot, basically, including with the permit process. I think that we shouldn't have a conjoined permit that goes between the Harris, Highgrove, and Spring. I think it should all be separated. And then that will give us a better way to look at what our costs are for each lot. So then it would better allow us to do a supply-demand, right? We could look at, like Harris, as honestly, Harris isn't generating a whole lot of revenue either, but that kind of conflict of that permit is just, if we can separate everything, I think that'd be best. The one thing I will say about this is that I know back some years ago, Sue, I believe, did a parking scoping study. I forget what you call it. And it was to really make these outside parking lots, these long-term lots. And so for your information, if we do make changes, it may go against that study. But I think times have changed where we're needing to fix a budget. So I just would like to inform you on that. The parking app itself, they did, when they first did the changes last year, there was a group, I wasn't a part of it, but they did look at many different vendors and had conversations and meetings with different vendors. I think the biggest contributor of why we stayed with IPS was because we had such a large volume of kiosks that were IPS originally. And so the cost to switching completely to a different vendor was pretty substantial. So,
okay, I figured.
Yeah.
But thank you.
Others?
I wanted to say I like your idea, Oscar, about the lower rate lots, and sort of to kind of affect human flow and make some deals with the transportation center. Maybe people would get back into it.
Yeah, the hope is.
I think I would.
You lower costs. It becomes a place that more people park. It starts to feel safer again, and then in a year or two, you look at the costs again and say, or in 5 years, can we increase this now that it's become a different, than it was 5 years ago? So,
and I would say if we're trying to balance things out based on usage, probably look at it yearly for a couple years and see what effect did this have. Have we pushed things too far one way or the other? Yeah, I don't know. I think it could help.
Are there others? Pete?
Yeah. So, with regards to changing permit costs based on lots, what my concern would be is the cannibalization of a lower parking, as far as coughing up $145 permit now, scurrying over here because it's lower cost. Well, I'll just park over here now because that's only $100. So that is definitely gonna. I would just caution. I don't have a good way other than if the High Grove lot, is that the number one lot that you said is the one where people are parking now?
Harmony is our number one lot,
well, yeah, but
and High Grove is shortly behind it.
Right. So, that makes a lot of sense to supply and demand that, of course. Then, that if those go and then if that forces somebody else in, I think people park there based on the convenience and how many steps that they have to take to get to wherever they go. I don't think, $5 or $10 is going to impact that any way, one way or the other, except when it comes to this budget, it will impact us. So I would really caution us jockeying around too many permit prices because I would be concerned that we would cannibalize other lots as a result of that. That's the first thing. The parking app, I'm just going to say I use actively 3 different parking apps. Brattleboro is one, Keene is another, Greenfield is another. I find myself in those municipalities often. Honestly, the ease of use for all 3 of them, to me, I don't notice it. The only one that if I have to run into Keene, they give you this 15-minute free option if you just got to run in and out of a store. That would be the only advantage to that. But you still have to go. You have to register by your plate, or if you have the app, it's already in there, and you can just go and go. So I don't know. I think the app is just. It's been around for how long has that app been deployed? I know I've been using it. I feel like for 5 years.
I honestly, I think it may have been employed shortly after we installed the new heads on the single pole meters.
Yeah.
So that was some years ago. So it's been around for a while, and it's made great improvements in the previous couple of years. So
No, it really has, and I know that this whole parking system has just been nothing but growing pains over and over again, especially now with the new kiosk things. As with regards to Sunday parking, retaining Sunday parking and adding 2 hours of parking during the week, not a fan. I mean, it's just another way of sort of taxing people who want to be. So if we want to move to like a free Sunday and then maybe adding 2 hours to set that time off. I mean, give a little, get a little. Sunday parking, where did I see the number? Didn't look like it was that bulging of a number, but to Oscar's point, in a revenue conversation, even if it adds up to be $9,000 in a year, that's something. So, but I mean, I would advocate for free parking downtown and maybe adding an hour or two during the week. So I think, is that a question? There's just a lot of statement there. All right.
Isaac, did you have comments?
I did, thank you. First of all, I want to echo concerns around simplicity, that I think the feedback I've gotten is that, wow, change is hard, having to navigate this new system. And I know for myself, I've been, I now figured out how to use the app, thanks to the explanation that I received here at a previous select board meeting. We want to make it easy for people to use our system. I agree with the idea of supply and demand and looking at, okay, well, where can we help even out the parking and maybe increase revenue? But keeping it simple and having really clear communication. I was really glad to hear in your last presentation talking about the emphasis on communication, because so many times when you park, I'm like, which zone am I in, and how do you do this again? And having to go walk around to figure that out is sometimes a little distressing when you're running late to an appointment. So I really appreciate your emphasis on the communication, and I think to Oscar's idea of having the some signage or like having one focus, if you're really wanting to increase utilization of a particular area, really putting some focus on there. I wanted to ask about a little bit more about the Sunday decision, and the decision. How was that decided to charge on Sundays?
We did it.
Yeah, we did
What
that.
was it? Was that members of the select board were really
revenue?
Revenue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And now we see a deficit that's significantly greater than what was anticipated. We're looking at 165. I mean, we knew that there would be some deficit this year as the growing pains, as you said, but we didn't anticipate a $165,000 deficit. And curious if your thinking about this has shifted. I mean, I realize that you were responding to what the select board gave you, but if you give us any insights into what the impact would be on, are we going to see a deficit next year? Or also, what do you anticipate being the risk in terms of finances? Because we know what we've made from Sundays. We don't know what we would make from that evening time.
Yeah, and I think that's why we've got a lot of feedback from different groups and merchants that they were looking for Sundays to return back to free. That's why we brought that, kind of hoping that decision would be made by the select board on their path forward on this decision. I can see either way when I look at this myself, but you are looking at a ghost number on those addition hours. We don't know what those will project, whether they may project more revenue, but it's a risk to take if you're looking to get Sundays back, because you already know what Sundays generate. So I think that's a discussion that the select board would have and tell us what direction they would like to move forward with.
And in my religion, Sunday is the Sabbath day, but I know that that's not everybody's religion, and I believe that was discussed at some point. Was that discussed at a previous select board meeting when this was decided to have all days treated equal? Okay. Finally, just one thing that I think about is tourists. That many of looking at some of the data, I think it was from the presented at a recent meeting, is that most of our tourists have a higher median income than the tourists have a higher median income than the locals. And so thinking about when are we most likely to be benefiting from the tourists' revenue that they might contribute, which probably isn't as much of a hardship for them as it might be for some local folks. Do we have a sense of which of those times we might be benefiting more from tourists?
Yeah, I think we're starting to roll right into that time right now. We're starting to see higher transaction numbers and higher revenue numbers.
You meant a day of the week, that didn't you?
Yeah, or a Sunday versus a weekend, a weekday evening.
I personally haven't kind of looked into that. I guess from a personal view, I go downtown quite a bit. I see a lot of tourists on weekends, so I would say probably the weekends, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, is when we're seeing a lot of that tourist revenue.
Is this a time for us to give, I guess, the input as well as the questions, right?
Absolutely.
So my thought is that let's give this a year and see how people are feeling a year from now, what the numbers are, get in a place where we're not running a deficit, and then start talking about, okay, are there ways where we can make something free again? Because I think I like free parking. I think free parking is popular. But we also are.
More than you know.
We're elected, and this is honestly, this is where I was a few months ago. I was like, yeah, free parking. People are upset about having to pay on Sundays, but I don't know if people are going to be excited about having to then learn a new. Like, I finally got used to paying on Sundays. I've learned that I have to pay on Sundays. So now to have to learn about every 5 to 6 days a week having to pay in the evenings. I'm just skeptical about how that will go over for the public, and I think at the end of the day, we need to be making decisions that are fiscally prudent and prioritize that and give it a little time to settle before we start messing with it.
Did you have a comment?
Yes, but I don't know if you've gotten to go yet.
I have not.
Okay.
No. One way to find out what the data is and decide on Sunday versus the weeknights is to start the weeknights, then you'll have that data, and then if you want to cancel one or the other, you'll have the data. And you can see whether it's, revenue neutral or whether our budget is whole. I have had comments from the public. One of those people who emailed me is here, and I'd like to hear from her in a minute. But another one just objected to the whole. It's great to change the lot numbers from letters to numbers, but they kind of thought that the zip code was confusing because it's a zip code. So if it could be shortened to like 301 and 302, then it wouldn't be as close to the zip code and might be clear for people.
So, to your statement on the zip code, most towns, when they come up with a zone code or number, it is normally a higher, like a 4 or 5 digit code, because there's so many different, the IPS is throughout the United States, right? So we knew that 5-digit code was not used by anyone else in the United States. I don't know what it is about 302, but I will say that the decals were all purchased and ordered. And so they are hopefully be here shortly, and they have those 05301, 05302.
Never mind.
They're color-coded, though, right? So they're going to be these nice colors that will help you kind of...
Great.
Yeah.
Way to get it done.
Go ahead, Oscar. Ask your comments.
The thing that's difficult for Sunday is that, for me, is that I think I've heard both arguments from the DBA was here talking about feedback from downtown merchants wanting Sunday parking. I think you feel that way, right, Peter?
I'm closed Sunday.
Okay, well, never mind. But I've talked to other downtown merchants and who are opposed to free parking because they think that's going to make it harder for shoppers to get those spots. Instead, it's going to be free Sunday, and I'm just going to, as a local, I'm just going to park down there and hang out downtown all day. So really, when I'm trying to make the decision about parking, I'm thinking a lot about the needs specifically of downtown merchants and what they want and what's best for them, and I'm hearing both things, so that makes it really tricky for me.
Well, we'll hear from them in a minute.
Yes.
Did you have other comments?
I do. I want to circle back on something on the budget, if that's okay, because now that we're in suggestion mode, is it possible to run the numbers if for the contracting the snow plowing, we do it with 4 inches of snow? Or if there's some lots that don't get as much attention, because that would mean less sand and less salt potentially too, which costs a lot of money. And so I guess I'm just wondering that $90,000, like, think how much think how much less we'd be in a hole if that was like $25,000 or $30,000 less.
So the nice thing about an enterprise budget is if we don't spend that 90,000 and our revenues are where we project them, it would end up being a surplus, basically. You get what I'm saying? So I agree. I think we can look at that in the future. I think with a short period of time of needing to get this budget by July, trying to give you something that would show that data or how we would present different policy change than we have in the past. I think that staff knows there's probably improvements that can be made, and we're hoping to make those improvements. So again, I think leaving it at 90,000 is where we felt comfortable. And if we don't spend that $90,000, it's added to us because
closer to making us whole.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Got it.
I just want to mention two things about your outlying parking lots. First is the parking study that was done. Before you make wholesale changes to that, I think it would be smart to sit with our planning department and learn the lessons of that study, understand them. And also there might be, in those more distant lots, a lot of residential parking that we need to provide for residents who, were houses that were built before there was adequate parking and so forth. So that's a concern because really there's a lot of residents downtown. And shall we open it up to the public?
Can I? I'm just curious as to when we switched over, when we got rid of the smart head meters and we switched over to the system was, I know at the best time we could have possibly done it because that's the only decision this town makes. But it was in December, correct? Was it?
Maybe November.
It was November 21st of 2024. We did our final complete switch over.
All right. Now I'm
Happy Thanksgiving, Peter.
Yes, thank you. My concern with now that I'm really kind of sort of processing this, although I still am a fan of free parking, but I'm also not a fan of Sunday free parking for all the reasons that have been cited. My biggest concern is making changes like this where I feel like as a downtown merchant who answers parking questions or was answering parking questions at a high frequency, really high frequency, has seemed to have waned quite a bit. So I am wondering if people are starting to develop that sort of that new muscle, like, okay, this is just how we're going to park. So I would be a little concerned about making a change right now that might upset that. But then again, if it's parking at 8 o'clock at night, I won't be around to answer those questions. But I'm just a statement, nothing, no force behind it, just an open thought. So.
I like open thoughts.
Do you?
Okay, shall we open up to the public? I see Penny chomping at the bit, so please.
Well, I'm only chomping at the bit because I don't know how to do this every week.
Luckily, we've stopped going every week.
I'm Penelope Wurr, and I have a retail store downtown, and I have occasionally come to this speaker here. Isaac, I just wanted to say one thing, that one of the things about Sunday parking is that there just isn't anybody parking in the parking meters on Main Street on Sunday, because everybody's parking behind the bank or behind this. So I just think Sunday's not a good day to expect much revenue. Do you know what I mean? There's just not a lot of people who are using the paying parking spaces. And I'm saying this before I read you this extremely long letter. And then the other thing is that when you get excited about raising revenue from giving out parking tickets, your gain becomes my loss. And you have to think about that in terms of whether it's worthwhile. So that's it. So this is a bit weird because I wrote this letter a long time ago, and I was advised not to bring the subject up until
till we have a budget.
Till you had the budget done. So some of what I've got in this letter is going to seem a little irrelevant because you've already discussed it and sort of gone it, but it's much easier for me just to read it, okay? Because I'm not a very good public speaker. So, first of all, thanks to all of you for turning up and being available to give time to such a variety of complex issues. The town budget has taken up a lot of your time, and I hope you now have the patience to entertain some new ones. Has anyone in town management added up what the town took in parking revenue? Well, clearly that's actually happened now. So, but what I wanted to suggest is, have you looked at the profit that the parking is making in relationship to the loss that the retailers are making? Because we do give the town, I think it's 75%, but hopefully it's gone up a bit because they've just changed it, of 1%.
It's gone from 70 to 75.
It's gone from 70 to 75. It would be nicer if it was 1%. But my shop gives the town 1% of my entire annual revenue, whatever it is, except if it's not a taxable item. And the only things that are not taxable are food and clothing. So there's going to be some shops that
Penny,
are going
let
to
me
give
just
less.
tell the public that I'm going to let you go over because you had
Yeah, because I've
prefatory
got a long
remarks,
letter.
but
Yeah, okay. Anyway, so the thing is could we please have a transparent accounting of looking at these two things? I don't really know how to explain it because I'm not an accountant. But I just think it's so pertinent to whether it's worth relying 100% on the revenue from the parking meters, you know, and the tickets and things like that. I realise there's lots of it. Anyway, there is a clear and present need to take a look at all the reasons that our local customers are not shopping downtown any longer. Undeniably, this is not a single problem with a single solution. There are many reasons for our customers to choose not to come downtown. There has been a real move from high street shopping towards online purchasing, particularly since COVID. The empty shop fronts in Brattleboro don't help to promote high street commerce, and the constant interaction with the less fortunate, homeless and panhandlers is a clear deterrent. And then there's the new parking meter. During the month leading up to the holiday last year, the town took the initiative to put in the new parking system. That was one of probably the dumbest things that you've done, I think. Sorry, no criticism there. But the town has come up, I take a quarter to a third of my annual income in that month following Thanksgiving. So that's a third, probably, of my income. And in terms of turnout, last year Brattleboro was a ghost town. The only customers that were coming into my shop were either exasperated or plain insulted at the idea of having to deal with a new parking system and pay for parking in the weeks before Christmas. There are almost no towns in our area that have pay parking before the holiday. The sales finally rallied in the last week, mainly because we were given free parking break. However, how could installing a new parking system in that month have been interpreted as a way to increase town earnings? And so I'm just saying this because I think you really do need to seriously think about not having any parking, I mean, maybe keep it on Main Street. I don't think that's unreasonable. But for the 2 weeks before Christmas, we just ought to have a pact that we are not going to charge people for parking, because the revenue that you get at that time of year is really huge. Okay, so taking the revenue the town should expect from its restaurants and retailers at that time of year has to clearly exceed any predicted income from the parking. The loss of traffic at that time of year is a loss of income to the town. So taking a look at the plan for this coming year, I'm not quite sure if the increase in parking costs has already taken place. Apparently that hasn't happened, right? You haven't increased anything. Sorry, I can't see in these glasses unless I've got them on. They're not. Can we make a legitimate inquiry into the earnings from the parking vis-à-vis the earnings that can be raised through the 1% sales tax, which I also believe we should be lobbying Montpelier about in order to keep all of that 1% and not 0.75% as it stands right now. I strongly believe that your attention should be focused on creating a good shopping environment downtown, as opposed to creating an environment full of stress and intimidation, which sadly is what we have right now. I can't tell you the number of people who come in to my shop and say, well, you know, I've only got 10 minutes because I know my parking meter's going to run out. And I know there's ways that you can go on your phone now with the app and you can increase your parking. But it doesn't always work, I don't think. So, sorry to keep you so long. I'm not suggesting that we should get rid of pay parking completely, but that we should take a creative look at how we can move around the times when we pay for parking and when we don't. For example, could we promote free parking on, say, Wednesday and Thursday from 3 to 7? This is slightly going to go against what you were talking about, and try to organize the retailers to stay open that extra time. I think that would be a really good idea, particularly in the summer, maybe not so much in some of the other times. And could
Penny, how much more?
Yeah, I've just this one last bit. Could we keep the parking on Main Street but make the first half hour free? I know that was something that somebody had said, it was 15 minutes or something in Keene. Could we keep some free short-term 2-hour parking only in some of the parking lots? Do you know what I mean? Like if you had some real fast ones that were less. Also, no one should have to pay for parking on Sunday. This is just a waste of time. There are plenty of places to park for free and no one is paying anyway. Is there even a traffic warden on Sunday? Or you don't need it because you have the app now? Is that true?
I really.
You don't know? Okay. All right. By the way, the town website still says that parking is free on Sunday. Did you know that?
Good to know. Seth?
In conclusion, can we all put our heads together to come up with a better plan, a plan that revitalizes and rewards our shoppers so that the experience that is afforded them is something that brings them back again and again, not one that chases them away. There are so many things that we as a community can do, not just at Gallery Walk or holidays, but all year round, to make the Brattleboro experience something that becomes an experience to be repeated to friends and tourists alike. We need to get a good rap, not a negative one. And I'm afraid we really are getting a very negative one these days, you know. So anyway, you're very patient. I'm sure you've been twiddling your thumbs.
Thank you, Penny.
Thank you.
I just want to mention a couple of things that you brought up. I think the most important is that the parking system is really a consortium of the police and the BRAT team and the public works and the planning. It's a interesting mix, and everyone's put their head together. But they also have consulted with the Downtown Brattleboro Alliance, and I think it would be nice if you're going to continue to do that, that Penny, maybe you join Kate in those conversations. I think
I was going to suggest that actually, because being downtown all the time, I do see patterns, and that
Yeah.
was one of the other things.
So that would be fine. But I do want, John, you want to mention what you've been doing in Montpelier?
Oh, well, we were trying to get more of that 1% to come back to the town, but we were unsuccessful in that ask of the full
The
amount.
state has recently decided to use was 30%, now they're giving us 5 more for other purposes, which is difficult for the people in Brattleboro to swallow. But we'll keep up that ban, that idea. Eric, did you have a comment?
No, you might just walk me to the mic so I don't check. That works faster. Thank you, doesn't understand microphones.
Okay. Hi, Eric Karen, District 7. I wanted to add an idea, but I also wanted to acknowledge I really like the great ideas we just heard, including from Amanda about the 4 inches. In my town where I used to live in Vermont, they went from clear roads to safe roads and saved a lot of money. So it went from, plowing down to the asphalt to if there was a few inches of snow, it was okay. And I felt safe driving. I wasn't driving, but going to work every day on those roads. I wasn't. My drivers were fine. Anyway, I have those ideas about like a break at the holidays where businesses need help. Great idea. And I want to throw one in there. I love the vision of the transportation center having lots of people coming and going, for people to be comfortable in there and back to using it again. And my thought was maybe another creative idea would be make the transportation center free on Sunday, so that people are encouraged to go there. It's just that you're there, and then you would see a lot more people getting used to being there. Hopefully, a lot of folks going, and just hopefully throwing out another creative idea to help get that transportation center healthy again.
Yeah, I don't hate that idea.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Marta?
Just when we're talking about parking, I wanted to point out one other thing. Although I know it, as far as paying tickets, there's no way to pay a parking ticket online if you don't know your citation number. There's no way to look it up with your license plate number, first name and last name. And I just wanted to point that out. That might be something helpful, so that maybe more people could pay their parking tickets online.
But Marta, if you have a ticket, isn't the citation number on the ticket?
What if you lost the ticket?
I've lost a lot of tickets. I'm with you.
That would never happen to anybody. So.
Yeah. So I just wanted to say, I would have paid my parking ticket faster if I had been able to look up my citations without having the actual ticket in front of me.
I will say part of that IPS thing I was talking about looking into is there is a portal to pay online. And it actually allows you to either pay your ticket, contest your ticket, which then would help us with our appeals process. So it integrates everything into one, makes it, and then they collect all the data from all that. So this system that we're looking at, that I hope I can show soon, is really going to bring all that into one, and an online portal where you may lose your citation. You can look up by your plate number, and you can find your ticket and pay it that way. So
Well, there you go. We have a solution. How nice. Rick?
Rick Sprite, District 9 Rep. As someone who parks downtown a lot and is a customer downtown, I really like the parking meters, but partly because they help us figure out whether we were in our parking space or not. A nice little flag there. But that being said, the parking garage, I used it mostly when the chargers were there, because I have a plug-in hybrid. I have, even though it's very convenient to downtown, more convenient than the High Grove lot, it's our friends, the denizens of the parking lot, that keep me and I think most everybody else out of there, not the price. So if we can make it feel safe over a period of time and this is to Isaac's point, we get used to a rhythm with parking. I think more than one of you have said that. And I think that's important I think it's important not to have unpleasant surprises and see if we can have some pleasant ones. And the most significant pleasant one that would help this whole situation would be to change the perception of especially the parking garage, downtown in general, but the parking garage in particular. I really like being able to park out of the weather, especially when it's snowing. And I know a lot of people also appreciate that and have in the past chosen to park in the parking garage because of that in the winter. So I would say don't muck about with rates, see what the next year holds in terms of the budget, and do what you can to clean up the parking garage more. I know a lot of effort's been put into it, and just I'd say keep after that and publicize success.
Thank you. So it was a goal of the last select board to make sure that the parking garage operates as a parking garage. And I think that we've come a long way, but there's more work to do. And the downtown safety plan will continue. Jeremy, do you want to discuss that?
I just had two quick things. One was the parking garage. As we normally see annually, we see an uptick of activity there, but it's nuanced in that the activity that we see that we're experiencing, dealing with, those types of things, are external to the parking garage. We're seeing very little activity internal in the parking garage. So where you park is not where we're seeing activity. Where we're seeing activity is on the Flat Street side of the parking garage. So I would tell you that there may be an incorrect perception there about what could happen to your car or you in the parking garage. I don't think that's not showing in our data as an issue. Yes, and you would also notice that the murder we had was on Flat Street.
Not in the
parking garage. So, and the plowing, there's a little nuance to that too. We call for, like, I've worked here for over 20 years. We call for plowing at 2 inches. They don't plow for us at 2 inches. So, like, we'll call and say, hey, we got 2 inches. Can you come plow? So they don't show up, but we have 2 inches. And if we did that, if we made a change to where we waited to plow till there was more snow, is that something we should bring up with, like, VLCT to see if there's a insurance issue for the town, or might cost us more one way or another? I don't know.
Thank you for both those points. Thank you. All right.
Can I just ask two quick questions?
You're pushing it, but
I just thought it was kind of interesting. How many of the people, I mean, I don't even know whether you know this or whether you can work these things out, but I just was wondering how many of the people who are parking using that, using the parking meters, would you say are people who are working downtown as opposed to who are coming in as travelers? Is there any way of knowing that? No, there isn't.
No, I wouldn't say I could pull that data from our system.
Okay, all right. And then the only other question that I just had is in terms of a quantity of hours that you need to be earning, do you have that as a quantity of hours? I mean, like in the year, do you need 3,000
Penny,
hours?
are you talking about a break-even amount?
Yeah, I'm just talking about, like, as an annual amount, what are the number of hours that your parking meters need to be earning?
I think this next coming year...
I mean, you don't have to tell me that now, but I just thought...
No. I just think this next coming year is going to be, like... It's going to give us a lot of information on where we should be, right? I mean, we're hoping for a surplus at the end of FY26. And if that surplus is more than we really need, we can talk about changing those rates to be beneficial to the merchants. But I think right now we have these numbers set to try to get this budget out of the deficit. And so we haven't had a full year with these new rates. Once we get a full year of the new rates and really see what we're generating for revenue, then we can start having the discussions on, are we charging too much? Are we enforcing too long?
Well, I think the rates are less of a worry than not having some time that is free. So in other words, if you had to make a choice between raising the revenue as opposed to the number of hours that people have to park in a parking meter, I think raising the revenue is a better way to go. Making it more expensive, but having opportunities for people to park for free. Do you know what I mean?
Darren, do you have enough feedback to come back with us?
I think, so I kind of wrote down here, I think if I could get a clear understanding on where the select board stands for Sundays, that would help. The permits, I'm feeling that staff could come back with a breakout of what our recommendations may look like after we speak with planning and maybe work with some DBA, come back with a chart with what we feel rates could look like, hours, things like that. And then the appeals, I'm working with IPS on, which I hope I'll bring back that information for you. And then the loading zones, we're basically just improving signage. So if I could just get a better understanding where the board stands for
On
Sundays, that would help us move forward.
And I'm thinking that if you had both Sundays and the evening, then you'd have that data, have the Sunday for a year, and then you can decide. But what do my colleagues think?
I don't know. I'm kind of, I don't have a strong opinion right now. I want to do the thing that will make the people who use and whose customers use it happy, and I don't know what that is.
Well,
and that's,
I think happy is the wrong word.
Well,
they'll never be happy.
Well, as little unhappiness as possible, but
Yeah.
I don't. I'm just not sure. So I guess I will also just put out the call, if for people who care about this, this is the period of time to send us emails and tell us what you think.
But it would be great if we knew, like if you could do a motion now, it'd be great so that we could bring back.
I mean, I think both is the conservative approach, and it's safer.
It provides for data.
Yes.
So that we can have a clear decision, with a full year of data. That's what I'm hoping for. Do people want to, let's poll the select board. Does the select board want to give guidance to the highway superintendent and the assistant police chief about Sunday parking, including Sunday parking and including evening weekday parking, to see what those numbers are before we make a decision to remove Sunday parking? All select board, yes?
Just I was going to suggest that I think that's, I like that. When I first heard it, I like that idea of getting more information and trying something new. Thinking about a whole year of doing that, imposing another time that people are having to pay. I'm not sure that that's going to. I think that the when we saw that presentation, the top concern that I saw up there was change is hard. Yeah. And if we're talking about actually increasing the number of hours people are having to pay, that's a little concerning to me. If we were to say, okay, we're going to try one night a week or something like that, maybe we could do that. But I heard other ideas like just make the parking garage free on Sundays or something like that. I wonder if we really want to move in that direction, if we could do something a little bit more modest than every day.
I mean, our experts can toy with that idea and give us options, but I think what we're talking about now is guidance so that they can come up with those options, and that options need to include Sunday or not. So do we want options that include Sunday? That's really the question.
Do you think we could hear from Heidi in case she has the answer?
It's a clarifying question of what you're talking about.
Go ahead.
When you said
On the microphone.
Sorry. Heidi Fisher, District 7. I just have a clarifying question about if you're adding the 2 hours, does that mean that we're paying a parking attendant or whatever you call the person who then is doing the enforcement of it? Because it might be not worth it.
It will be taken into consideration. All right. So really what we want to know, we want to give Darren the guidance. Are we adamantly opposed to Sunday, or is Sunday still part of the mix? And that's really your question, isn't it, Darren?
I'll say I would prefer Sundays to be free because it already says that on the website.
Well, it's
And then that doesn't have to
easier
change
to change it on the website. We want to make the parking budget whole.
Right. Yeah. Anyway, you asked for our opinion, so that's fine.
All right. Oscar?
I'm not adamantly opposed to Sunday. I guess, Darren, you'd really like one answer, right? Like, should the budget include Sundays, evenings?
But we're going to give you 6.
Both.
I can attempt.
No,
I mean, we can bring this on and keep going on. I can bring you back more information, but to give you some sort of first reading or to amend a ordinance change, which this will be needed to do, I need to know what direction you want to all go in, because it's like, are we going to go Sunday's free and that's it? And then that's how we would make that first reading, or is it additional hours? So that's what I'm trying to get to clarify.
No, I hear you, and I don't want to ask you to bring back a whole bunch of different options or something like that. It seems like the numbers are basically look like they will be similar if we do an extra 2 hours in the evening with free Sundays, keep it the way it is exactly. I'll follow the board on this one. I don't have a strong. I think both would be completely adequate.
You are the board.
Really? This wasn't all a dream?
You're one of the top 5 political people in Brattleboro.
Your vote matters.
Can I try to sway Oscar on this one?
Please.
No.
No?
Or can you start at this end of the table?
Yeah.
I mean, sure.
Well, I'd just like to make a motion that we don't amend the ordinance regarding the days that we pay for parking.
So keep as is.
Yeah, that we just keep it as is in terms of the days that we pay for parking.
Which is not what Amanda was talking about, and Isaac was
Oscar.
here. Oscar was either here nor there. So, Peter.
Yeah, so I've been running some numbers because it's what I do. And, with March seems to be like a complete anomaly for Sunday parking. But, by leaving Sunday parking, if we just averaged around, which looks like maybe not unrealistic, about $3,000 a month for Sunday parking, that's like $36,000, which has me sort of going back to my thought that I had earlier about, I feel like the fire is going out around the parking change now. We're going to implement this other little thing with color coding because I hear the stickers have already been ordered, that might fire everybody up. So I'm kind of okay with just leaving it go for another year.
On Sunday.
And
your Sunday.
But no, he's saying leave it alone.
Yes,
right?
we have 2 leave it alones.
2 leave it alone.
Yeah. Leave it alone,
I'm fine
Oscar.
to leave it alone.
All right.
Okay.
You got 4 votes for leave it alone.
I'm fine to leave it alone as well.
There you go.
Thank you.
And that was easy.
And we're not locking this decision in now. This decision doesn't get made for another.
Yeah, and when you and the DBA meet, you can with these 2, you can have that discussion.
And we are going to have coffee, and you are going to try to convince me and anyone else who wants to do that. Now is the time for this year for parking to lobby your select board. So send me some emails.
I think we need to move on.
All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for this lively conversation.
Thank you, guys.
All right, not right along.
A couple more items.
We have just 2 more items. The next one is water tank necessity resolution, which is a very tricky business that John will explain to us.
Yeah. Back in 2024 at the RTM, there was a bond article to do a project at Pleasant Valley to build a secondary tank there. The Select Board warned that for the 2024 RTM, and at that time, we should have done this thing that's called a necessity resolution, which would be a statement by the Select Board that the public interest of necessity demands the public improvement of the secondary water tank, and that the cost of that improvement would be too great to be paid out of the town's ordinary annual income and revenue. Staff believe that that is the case. It's come to our attention that we can correct this oversight and keep this project on track by now having the Select Board approve a necessity resolution for this purpose. And the town attorney has reviewed this and said that the Select Board may sign this resolution from a legal standpoint if you agree with that premise.
Right. Well, great. Is there a discussion on that?
Do you want a motion first?
Yes.
All right. I'll motion to approve the necessity resolution for the Pleasant Valley Water Storage Replacement Bond article and to sign the resolution.
Second.
Okay. Is there any discussion?
No.
Is there any discussion in the public? Is there any discussion online? All Select Board members in favor of this resolution, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
5-0. Thank you very much. Okay. All right. Now, next we have committee appointments.
Drum roll, please.
Yeah, we have really a slate.
Yeah, I was just going to say, can we just propose a slate?
There's 2 parts to this as they turn off the lights. One is to just approve as a slate the candidates that we have. There are no contested because
who dropped out for the DRB?
There was a third person for the DRB that now wishes to be an alternate, but I don't see their name.
I don't know which one is which.
Is that, we have Nora Dissinger, Maya Haskagawa, and Keith Maxwell?
Well, we can vote for them, and Jessica can sort it out.
That's fine. It's Maya. Maya was okay being an alternate, I believe.
Great, great. Okay, so if that's the case, then all in favor of the...
Quick question. There are a couple people on here multiple times. Are they running into any limits on being on a number of committees? Okay.
No. I think that's the Gary Stroud rule. All in favor of these applicants who have applied for these vacancies, and there are no contested, and then I will have a discussion about the open seats that remain. So.
All right, so I'll motion to accept the committee appointments as presented?
As presented.
Okay. As a slate?
As a slate.
Yes.
Okay, Peter has moved to accept the applicants for the vacancies as listed on page 93 of 257 for the open committee and board terms. All Select Board members in favor of that slate, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
All right, now, I have a little email from Jessica, which tells us rather quickly
Should we congratulate Eric? on being a wayer.
The wayer of the coal.
I am the new wayer of coal.
Great.
Joining David Levenbach.
Great.
Yep.
Well, I'm glad you stayed to the end of the meeting. All right. All right, let's continue. We still have no candidates for one seat on the Planning Commission and the 2 seats on the Conservation Committee. We received one application for Traffic Safety Citizens Rep and one for Energy Committee, but they'll go on to the next Select Board meeting agenda along with anyone else who applies for the deadline. And we have no candidates for honor roll or inspector of lumber. So all you good citizens out there, please volunteer. Yes.
Yep. We do have a comment
just
from
appointed
a
one.
member of the public.
Gemma, would you like to speak?
Just wanted to let you know that I did not realize that this was going to be on the agenda tonight. But I did submit an application just before the meeting for the open seat on the Planning Commission, which has long been an interest of mine. And I've been involved with the Planning Commission before in a citizen advisory capacity when they were producing the housing study a few years ago. So I just wanted to let you know that I was not able to get a copy of the of my application when I submitted it, but it should be in the queue, I guess, for whoever checks that.
Thank you. Yes, and so at our next meeting, we will vote on those additional placements, and I thank you for volunteering.
Thank you.
All right.
Should we, one more time, re-describe the application process for anyone who's hearing this for the first time? Well, go on the website.
There's an application form on the website, and those applications go to the town manager's office administrative assistant, and she will coordinate that for the board for the next meeting. All right, I'll take one more motion.
I'll motion to adjourn.
All in favor of adjournment, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Okay. That's 5-0.
Still managed.
Thank you, BCTV. Thank you to Seth. Thank you for all those present and online, and thank you to the board.
Thank you.